What is Agile? Hi friends and professional greetings of the day. This is Pritesh Patil welcoming you in our new initiative, that is Decodify and Simplify the PMBOK version 7. So this chapter 1, that is Introduction of the Standards, having a 3 section. First would be the purpose for the project management standard. Second would be the key terms and the concept. And the third would be the audience, who are the audience for this standard. So in the purpose, we are discussing about how it relevant for the standard. In the key terms and concept, we are discussing in detail about the vocabulary, standard terms and the concept and the audience. Let's begin. So what is the purpose for the project management standard? So project management standard is providing you the basis to understand the project. It provides you how you can intend for the outcome and the value delivery. So that basis it get from the standards. And you can apply this standard regardless of which industry. Either you can belong from the software industry or minings or any other civil industry or location, whether you are from Africa or Asia, irrespective of the location, irrespective of the size and the delivery approach, whether you are going for waterfall or agile, you can apply this standard. So that is the beauty of this standard, that is giving you a universal applicability. It is self-validating and it gives you an empowerment. So that is the purpose of the standard. Now we are discussing about the key terms and the concept. Now before we go in detail of the key terms, I would like to give you why it is required. So key terms, it's giving you a vocabulary. So the understanding, we can discuss with each other because we can understand each other's language. Similarly, there are some terminology. If we can understand the common vocabulary, we can say in a project management, we can understand each other's language in a better way. So similarly, in the project management body of knowledge version 7, there are some key terms and the concept that is very most important required for us to understand so that we can apply this knowledge seamlessly. So you can refer in the chapter 1 over here, or you can refer it in the glossary section after the appendix in the PMBOK version 7. So first definition is the project. What is the project? Project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to produce unique product, service or a result. Irrespective of what would be the product or irrespective what kind of the service, you can apply those principles, tools and techniques for the project management. Program, it's a group of interrelated projects that we call a program that used to achieve a higher objective, outcomes or benefits that cannot be achieved if we are individually managing the projects. If I wanted to give you an example, let's discuss the example 1, that is project 1, that is building a school. Second example, project 2, that is building a college. And the third example, that is project 3, that is launching of the satellite. Now, if I wanted to group them in a program A, let's call program A, that is project 1 plus project 2 plus project 3, not possible because it requires different skill sets. So I can, in a program A, I can group project 1 plus project 2 because it requires a similar set of expertise. What is the advantage? Why I need to integrate or manage at a program level? Because suppose at a project level 1, I require 100 trucks of brick. Project 2, I require 1000 trucks of brick. So if I negotiate at the program level, I can negotiate and get better rates. So that is the one advantage, the cost advantage. Second, I can move the resources. Suppose project 1 resources are not available, I can shift resources from project 2. But I cannot merge with the project 3 because it's having a different skill set. So interrelated projects I can group, that we call program. And the portfolio is the totality of organization investment. When I say totality, it's group, project, program, and the operation as well. So single penny I have invested in a different project program, that counts at a portfolio level. That is how I invest money, how I get return from that. That is the portfolio. That is the very C-suite level that we call portfolio. Now, project management. Project management is the application of the knowledge, skills and tools and techniques to achieve the project objective. Now there are theories, there are so many tools and techniques available, but until and unless I am utilize them to achieve my project requirement, I cannot term as a project management. So that is project management. Project manager, it is the person who is accountable to execute and to deliver the project objective. In the PMBOK, it is clearly mentioned that we need to mention the name of the project manager in the project charter. So project charter is a document which gives an authority to the project manager to utilize the organization resources, and he or she is accountable for the success or fail of the project. So that is a very important person for a project management point of view. And the project team, a set of individual professionals performing of project related activities. It having a cross functionality who is reporting to the project manager generally. So this is the project team. So these are some standard terms and things. Apart from that, there are other terms that I will going to explain, but before that I would like to explain the difference between the project and the operations. So as you see from the screen over, project is a temporary where operation is ongoing. Project is a unique and operation is repetitive. Project closed after attaining that particular objective, where operations are for sustainable business objective. If I wanted to give you an example, project is a temporary because it start and end date very well defined, while operation is for constantly things. Prototyping a car model is an example of the project. It start with 3 months time period. I come up with the prototyping and the project team is wind up. Where an operation, that is an assembly line production of the car, that is an example that is ongoing for 5 years, 10 years until there is a maturity in the product life cycle that is going on. So this is the difference between project and operation. Why I have given you an example? Because based on that, there are some few other terms that I would like to explain you in the upcoming slide. So value. If you attended my previous session, I had mentioned the value is very important. That is the reason the PMBOK version 7 is put more emphasis on that. PMBOK version 6 is changed radically from a process driven to principle driven, and they are focused more on the value delivery. So what do you mean by the value? Value is the worth, importance or usefulness of something. If I wanted to give you an example, that is, value is the term that depend on person to person. That is, different stakeholder perceive value in a different ways. If I wanted to give an example, for the customer, value is how they utilize the function or feature of the product. Like for me, an iPhone, what are the features it provides? That is a value for me. But for an organization, most of the corporate organization, value would be in terms of the financial metrics, that what are the money they have invested and what are the return you are getting. So return on investment, that is the value for the organization. But for non-government organization or for a government, value, how it depends, how they better serve the citizen for the country, or how they serve the purpose of humanity. That would be a value for them. So society value can include a contribution of group of communities for the environment. So this value is a term that vary from person to person and from a different organization to organization. And now we are discussing system for value delivery. So as I told you that the PMBOK version 7 is more focused on the value delivery. What do you mean? How you can achieve that value? That is a collection of strategic business activities aimed at building sustainable and or advancing the organization. So the collectively, what I told you, that portfolio, different programs, the project and the operation, how collectively all this can add value, how we can bring value. Means suppose what challenges nowadays organizations are facing, there is silos, different projects, different programs, they are not discussing with each other, there is no synergy between, and that is the reason there is waste of resources, there is a very high attrition rate. So all these are reason that we are not getting a value. So in the system for value delivery, we need to focus how this collectively portfolio, program, project and operation work synergistically to achieve the corporate organization goal, that is the system for value delivery. Now, other key terms and the concept that is very important from the project point of view that I just flash it over here, that output, capabilities, outcome, and the benefits. So what do you mean by the output? The definition says it's a specialized product or delivery. If I wanted to give you an example, let's say in your organization there is no sales system or Salesforce or other software available that process done manually. So that is the need for having a new sales system. You had visualized that project charter is created and the project is assigned to come up with a new sales system. So that is once your project team deliver that output that we call new sales system. But that output or a product alone cannot serve the purpose or match the organization objective because let's say there is a sales system, but after having a new sales system, you get an idea that your revenue is full by manifold, and you go and dig it out and you come to know that the new sales system, people are not able to utilize them. That is a change management happens to every organization. So capability, you have to build the capability around the output, that a set of project output required to deliver an outcome. So the new sales system is your output, how you can train the manpower, you provide documentation and training, and then they are able to utilize that. That is the capability builder to utilize those output. That is the capability. And the outcome, that is a business change that occur when output is used. So the new sales system and you had create a capability, both worked, and then you get a change in the ecosystem. What kind of change? Like sales order are processed more quickly and with fewer errors. So in a manual system, let's say it took 10 hours to process a sales order and all that complete sales process. After having an automated system, it took hardly 10 minutes. So there is a drastic change. The process is shrink and there is a fewer errors. So that is a change by using the output, and the benefit is always measurable. Please mark this keyword, that is measurable. That is, you should having a KPIs in place, key performance indicator, by which you are measuring the change. Like your costs are reduced by 10%, your sales order are increased by 50%, and your revenue is increased by 10%. That we call a benefit. So this is a key term that you have to understand and define: output, capability, outcomes, and the benefit. That is common everywhere. So when you are PMP aspirant, when you pass examination and when you are discussing the key terminology, that you have to be differentiate between output, capability, outcome, and the benefits, so that you can coordinate in your team, in your office very quickly and effectively. Now, who are the audience for these standards? All of us. There is anyone who is aspirant for the project management practitioner, consultant, educator, student, sponsor, stakeholder, vendor, whomsoever are having that aspiration to contribute and to utilize the best project management practices. All of them are the audience for this standard. We are discussing on the chapter 2, that is system for value delivery. Before we go in detail of this chapter, I just wanted to give you a brief view. In this chapter, as you see, there are 5 subsections. That is 1, creating a value. 2nd, that is organization governance system. 3rd, that is function associated with the projects. And the 4th, that is project environment. And the 5th, the product management consideration. In today's session, we are just focusing on the 2.1, that is creating a value. Let's begin. So before we describe about creating a value, we need to understand why it is required of value consideration. So why value? So if you check over here, we are living in a VUCA world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So in this VUCA world, there is, like recently the way COVID pandemic impact the entire ecosystem. So in this VUCA world, for organization to think on a long term and sustain in this ecosystem, they require to create the value. And what challenges we are facing nowadays with the project mindset, that now in organization there is a silos when the projects are think on individual silos and they are not focusing on the entire organization, how they deliver the value. And there are surprising facts If you check the Standish group, they had done a survey in April 2014, and they found that out of 50,000 database, 98.8 projects are failed on the 6 measured the project performance on this performance parameter like cost, time, value, scope, customer satisfaction, and strategic objective. Here the value delivery, that's very important. And I'm happy to share the case study with you that PMI's Pulse survey in 2021, they do such kind of survey where the professionals, they survey and get insight of the market, and that PMI Pulse survey 2021 revealed the fact that the organization, what we call a gymnastic organization, they reveal the fact that the gymnastic organization are such an organization, they are focused on creating a value rather than focusing on the process. They use the landscape of their organization team, the structure, tools and techniques in such a way that they can directly deliver the value. They focus more on the value delivery. So in today's session, we are discussing how we can transform our traditional organization into the gymnastic organization and how we can create a value. Let's discuss with the value delivery. So first, in our previous section also we had discussed about value delivery. So what is the value? So value is the worth, importance or usefulness of something that depends on the perception and the value perceived differently for the different people, different stakeholders. An example, customer can define value, the ability to specify features and function. I had given you the example, I'm an iPhone user, so what features iPhone provide me, that is a value for me. And some organization, that is government and non-government, the value consideration for the government organization would be how they provide a customer or a citizen satisfaction, the services to the citizen. And for a for corporate, their focus on the value delivery, return on investment. So on very holistically, if I wanted to define value, it's a ratio of satisfaction of need, that both monetary and demonetary, and denominated by use of resources in terms of the money, people, time, energy and material. So that gives me the value. I will briefly define that. In alternative, value ratio would be the benefit divided by the expenditure and the function divided by the cost. The holistic idea of the value delivery is mentioned over here, that value, that is a balance between the benefit and the expenditure. In this ratio, if you check on the numerator side, the satisfaction of needs, that is monetary and non-monetary, that is balanced between the stakeholder. Different stakeholders require a different kind of needs. So that is how you can satisfy those needs. Divided by the use of resources, how efficiently and effectively use the resources in terms of the money, people, time, energy. So that's the combination where we need a synergy between the different organizations. And current reality that most of the organizations fail because they had created a very bureaucratic departmental structure, and there is a less communication and there is a barrier, and because of that they are not giving or delivering that value. So that is the challenge, and how we can overcome this challenge that we are going to focus in upcoming session. So now, creating a value, when we need to focus on creating a value, or what to focus in terms of the creating a value. So most of the time people think that Pritesh, we should focus on the value and benefit on very last stage, but that is a myth. We need to focus throughout the project life cycle. So before beginning of the project itself, during the project, and after the project completion itself. So on what parameter, like before you start the project, what are the things you need to focus? So let's say the SWOT analysis that happen at the strategic level, at the PMO or EPMO, they do whether we need to invest in this project or not. That depends on the strength, weakness, opportunity and threat analysis. So strength and weakness, that is or external factors. Opportunity threat, that is internal factor that you need to take a call, and your business steering committee meeting will approve the project. For that, they do feasibility study, whether you need to bid for this project or not. And then the business case. In the business case, you do all the detailed analysis, whether what is the cost required, what is the benefit, what is the return on investment, what is the payback period for this particular project, where to invest or not to invest. So these all are required to discuss and understand in terms of the value delivery before you even start the project. During the project, can you guess? Yes, alignment. So you have to constantly justify the business case throughout the project. So when you project your project in the different stages, if your project is no longer delivering the value, you should stop that project rather than wasting the organizational resources in the project. Alignment is also very well required, that you should align with your organization strategy. If your project is no longer validated or aligned with your organization strategy, then you should scrap. I just wanted to give you an example. Like you are working with an education department, government enterprise, and their project is to build 10,000 schools during this year. But recently, because of the COVID pandemic, no schools are working. Okay, so at the time, the organization objective to deliver education to the children, but the school, the physical ways of delivering education is not aligned. So they transform that, how we can develop the IT enabled capability to provide an classroom, virtual classroom kind of setup. So in that case, your project of creating a school building, that is no longer valid for your organization strategic objectives. So ideal cases, you should scrap that project and invest those funds into the infrastructure where you're creating an IT enabling services or virtual classroom. So that is how we can deliver the value at the project execution, and after the project completion, that value is how you transform the project to the operation team, and how this operation team get leverage of that things that we will discuss in detail. But these are the a very bird eye view of what and how and when to focus of the value delivery. Now, very interesting facts that this diagram represent over here, that give you on the x-axis there is a time horizon and there is a y-axis there is a quantum. So if you focus on the value delivery during the initial stage of the project, its potential to add value is very high. Like if I want to share an example, if you wanted to build a school building or any other construction building, at the time you can plan that how well you can do an energy efficient, a green building concept that not required, the way you have designed that building that have a sufficient day and night air circulations and a natural light, they require a solar panel, so that you can design in the very beginning. But the way you implemented the project in between or at the later stage, if you plan to add value, that would be difficult. If you check over here, the potential to add value is decreased during the project execution, and the cost for the change is also increased. So initial level there is no more change or cost required. You just need to change the blueprint or some architectural drawings. But at the last, when you had built up in between, at the time there is a high cost you have to pay for such changes, and the resistance to the change is also very high. So you should ideally focus on initial time of the value delivery, and throughout the project life cycle you have to constantly validate that benefit. Right now we are discussing the chapter 2, that is system for value delivery. This is chapter containing the 5 sections, and we are discussing today the section 2.1 and 2.2, that is creating value and organization governance system. So creating value, we had discussed in our previous section how to create the value and when and what kind of things we need to consider while creating value. Now in this section we are discussing what are the components that we need to consider and what are the components by which we can create the value. So there are many. To start with, it's an entire ecosystem. We are working and doing the things in an environment. So there are external and internal environment, and in that we are doing the projects, program, and the portfolio. So project is a simple, a standalone initiative, a group of interlinked projects clubbed together that called a program, and the totality of organization investment including projects, program, and in operation that called a portfolio. So all It's a complete ecosystem that is the component for value delivery. So when the challenges come, when we are think from a silos point of view, when a project 1 is not having a coordinate with project 2, or there is no synergy between the organization, there is different silos, different department and bureaucratic culture, that is a barrier to deliver the value. By creating a value, these are the components, how well or effectively we can utilize this all component that bring a synergy in the ecosystem, and that in turn give an multiplier effect that help you to achieve your organization objective. So that is the main objective, that creating a value. So these are the components that require to work in a coordination to deliver the value. Now we are trying to understand what is the information flow, how the information flow. So if you check over here, first the senior leadership, who is a CXO level, your boards of directors and all that, their work and their role is to provide a strategy. They are defining how to build a long-term plan. So that is a strategy, what to do, that they basically define. After that, they define in a portfolio what are the projects and programs need to be incorporated, or what are the projects and programs need to be select or invest for next horizon or next financial plan. So they define the portfolio. Now the information with the portfolio, there is a portfolio program managers, that's their responsibility. What defined by the senior leadership, how they execute that program and project under that portfolio during that timeline. That is, they are focused on more on outcomes, benefit tracking. So they pass on that information to the program and projects, in which they provide a guidance that how to execute within the timeline and how they deliver the value out of that. And the program and projects, they are focused on timely delivering with the scope, time constraint with the quality, so that they transform that new change initiative into the business as usual, that is your operation things. They transform the new product, service or initiative to the operations, and then that become the system, your organization capabilities. So that is the information flow from the portfolio to the program to the project and to the operations. And after that, there is a reverse flow as well. From the operations, they are progressing. If there is some challenges, some issues with the daily operations, they highlight by exception or issue or risk register. And project and program are highlighting by day-to-day progress report of the project. That frequency depends on what is the requirement of the end user, sometimes daily, sometimes periodically based on the quarterly or fortnightly that we can define. And the portfolio will show the progress and a performance of the entire portfolio to the senior leadership. So ultimately this information flow is required to understand and to highlight how our projects or program ultimately link with the organization objective. And if it's not aligned with the organization objective, there is no requirement or there is no need to waste the organization resources. So that we need to understand how the information flow, and this is very well explained over here. Now we will detail it out, the benefit tracking that is interlinked with the information flow, how we track the benefits. So as you see over here, so first part that how the before the project phase, in the pre-project, in the transition, and once you complete the project and hand over to the operations team, how the information flow. I will explain this diagram by example of one thermal power station. So as you see over here, there is a thermal power station which needs to be built during the 5 years, and it's required a $10 million US. So after you complete the project execution, during the 5 years, your revenue to the organization is zero, right? So it's showing very shrinkage over here. There is no revenue on the top. After the 5 years, during the first year, once you complete your project, hand it over to the operation team, at that on the 6th year, you get a revenue of 1 million. My question is that your role is not completed at a project level. So once we have a project mindset, we are just focusing to complete and hand it over to the operation team. But we should have that project, program and product life cycle in our mind, and we think from the organization point of view, where organization invest $10 million US, so that by what you can deliver, what value you can bring to the organization. So at this, you handed over this tracking to the business change manager or someone who is accountable, who is doing a periodically review. On the 6th year, you do review that what money an organization invested, how much you can get return out of that. So that is benefit tracking on the 6th year, 7th year, 8th year, and so on and so forth. On the 10th year, it would be 15 million. And so from this, I just wanted to give you an hypothetical example. Let's say you get a return on investment. Your payback period would be 8 years. By that, you get the whole money you have invested, and then your profit will be started. So this benefit tracking and how the information flow. So if during the operation of the 7th or 8th year, if you started with a business case that your thermal power plant generating 1000 megawatt electricity every year, but if somehow because some maintenance issue it's not able to generate that 1000 megawatt electricity, its productivity decrease or efficiency decrease by some percentage, it's generate only 500 megawatt, then you need to intervene and you come up with some other projects to back up and make that benefit tracking up to the mark. So this is how we do take the benefit. Now after this understanding of the holistic thing, we are discussing about organization governance system. So before we understanding about how we govern the projects and all that, we need to understand the difference between the project or a governance and the management. So governance is about how we lead the organization. On the counterpart, management is about how we manage the day-to-day operations and the projects. Governance is focused on vision and strategy, while management is focused on executing the strategic goals. Governance is focused on policy and framework, while management is focused on how to deliver that things. So governance bodies to oversee the management, and they are not there to manage day-to-day things, while the executive bodies are there to manage the delivery. Example of the governance would be your steering committee, boards of directors, CXO level, and your management would be each and every team members on your team are managing the project, they are delivering this. So it is not a clear-cut bifurcation between the governance and management, but on a very high level things, governance is not involved in all small issues. If they are involving, you are wasting their time and energy. They are focusing on more strategic and policy level thinking, while management is involved in both. They are governing as the authority defined by the governing body, and they are managing the things as well. So with that understanding, we are understanding the governance system. So when we are executing the project, we should have that thought process that whatever the project, each and every team member should abide with the governance policies. So if you check over here, there is a team manager, project board, and the corporate board. So a team manager, so what challenges a governance or the top executive face that the time constraint. So if they involve in each and every small things, they lose the control, means they don't have the time there to manage all the things. And if they are not involved in each and every things or decision points, they lose the control from the project. So how to resolve that issue or that dilemma? So one technique that we call delegation or set the threshold limit at team manager, project, program, and governance level. So how it's helped that the management not need to involve, the governance body not need to involve in small trivial things. They save their time and simultaneously they have the control. Like if I wanted to give you an example, the team manager have the authority of this performance that $1,000. So until the $1,000, the small change requests come, they can try and accommodate at that level. But beyond the $1,000, they have to take an approval from the project manager, and project manager have that authority up to $10,000. He not need to take an approval from the project board. On his level, he can do that necessary requirement. After the $10,000, he need to escalate further to the project board up to $50,000. The project board has the authority. Within the $50,000 board, after the proper documentation and impact analysis, change control board will approve that. But beyond $50,000, they had to raise the concern to the corporate board up to $100,000. So this how you can set a parameter like scope variation, cost variation, time variation. So until that designated authority, a particular level authority will take a call. Beyond that, they can escalate to the further level. So that give you a synergy, means you not need to involve your top management on small trivial things. That save their time. They involve that time in a strategic thinking, but simultaneously they don't lose the control, because beyond certain limit you have to come to them. So this is how the governance mechanism that is aligned with other strategies like a quality control and other things. What is your governance policy? You have to refer that, and you have to back of the mind during your project execution. You align with that governance system. We are particularly discussing about the section 2.3, that is function associated with projects. So what are the functions associated with the projects? There are many functions, right? But that depends on what kind of project environment you are having. What would be the organization structure? Like it would be a centralized, decentralized. You are working on a remote site where there is a PMO. You have to coordinate with the PMO. So many things are depend. Based on that, your function will be vary. Here we have just identified and shown the generic functions. That is just an indicative list, but there are many functions that depends on the complexity and the risk involved with the project and the type of the project. So let's begin. To start with, first, oversight and the coordination. That is the basic function we are doing in the project management. Oversight and coordination, that depends on what kind of project and what time zone. Like you are in initiating, you are in planning, you are in executing, you are in monitoring control, or you are in closing phase of the project. So based on that, your coordination will be different and your oversight would be different. So that is the basic function we are doing and dealing by the project, that is function associated with the project. Second would be an objective and the feedback. Now here we need to understand the very important things, that our end user and the sponsor might be different. The perception about the project, the requirement. So there are some explicit requirement and there are some implicit requirement. You have to decipher what exactly the need, exactly the need of the client, and that by providing the feedback, understanding the client requirement, so that where you need to understand the client by repeatedly providing them feedback, and simultaneously you need to check whether you are aligned with your strategic objective. So that is your second function. Third function, to facilitate and support, and now that would be depend on different type of the stage, like how you facilitate to the client by providing a requirement gathering workshop. There's different trainings and workshop you can arrange for a different purpose for your team, capability build-ups, sometimes to train them. So that is depends, that would be for your team and for the client as well, the facilitation and the support function. Then perform work and contribute insight. Now project is such a beautiful thing, an organization which having a cross-functional. There is no functional things, means there are different functional department involved together to execute some unique things, right? So there are multiple functions, multiple skilled peoples working on such assignment. So there is a discussion, interchanging of information, and from that you come out very insight of the project, some lessons learned kind of things that you can incorporate in your project. So that would be the fourth function, that is perform your work during the execution of that particular assignment or delivery, how you can contribute the insight you get, and that will be helpful for other projects or in your project team to someone other's team. Apply expertise. So that is both the things, like there are some subject matter experts because it's a unique project, multi-facet things are there. So how you involve that might be from your internal team. Sometimes you hire an external consultant who is a subject matter expert who apply their expertise, and that knowledge should be transferred, and knowledge transfer that be happens. So this is also a function of your project management. Next, business direction and insight. So here where your boards of directors and other stakeholders comes into the picture, they check whether how the strategic objective, outcomes, benefits are tracked, and if the business justification is still there, if there is some correlation and correction is required, how you can do such things. So that is one of the functions that I just give you a very generic idea so that you get more things in that. So it is just a brainstorming kind of things we are doing right now. The resources and the direction. Now here also you have to have that strategic objective in back of your mind, how this strategic objectives is aligned with your outcomes, the outcomes is aligned with your capability and capabilities to the outcome, and how you can align your vision of your organization so that you can occupy and align those resources that they can create an impact that's really matters. So that is how you can give a value delivery things to the organization. Resources, I am not focused on the human resources, but any resources that is required for your project. And finally, having a maintenance of the governance arrangement, so that we had already described in our section 2.2 how the project governance will happen at the project level, program level, portfolio level, and the corporate level, how the government policies and procedures, how we make sure that whatever the governance mechanism and the threshold limits set for your project, how you can deliver those things. So that is about our governance and our project management responsibility that we are maintaining the governance. So these are the basic 8 functions we had highlighted over, but it's just an indicative list. Actual function that completely depend on demography and type and the culture of the projects you are handling and in which organization, which context. So that is vary from project to project and demography to demography. So before we discussing about the project environment, let's try to understand what you mean by the environment. So let's discuss what is the dictionary meaning of environment. That is something which is not in your control. We have to adjust with that, right? We are all working and living in an environment, and similarly project is also exist in environment. So the environment can be defined as something related to the natural world and the impact of human activity on its condition or the culture that an individual lives in, and the people and institutes with whom they interact. The point is, the environment is a condition which we have to live in, and it influences our behavior in a certain way. Let's consider the example. Just focus on the lady. She's shivering because of the cold weather. Now, the cold environment forces her to wear a warm clothes, that is woolen clothes. So here the cold weather is the environment which forces her to wear the woolen clothes, and that is the impact of cold environment on her. So the point is here that we cannot escape from the environment. Some or other way, by using the different techniques, we are trying to reduce the impact or manipulate that things, but that is something which is not sometimes in our control directly. So similarly, projects happens in an environment, and that environment would be different, like internal environment and external environment, and it is not necessary that it's always favorable. Sometimes it's favorable, sometimes it's not favorable, and sometimes it's neutral. So let's discuss that what are the project environment and how it's impact the influence on the project deliverables or a project. So project environment would be the two types, internal environment and the external environment. Internal environment would be like your deliverables, your the ecosystem, like factors internal to the organization can arise from the organization itself, like from portfolio, program, or another project, or sometimes it's a combination of all that impact the influence. Your internal organization politics, your process assets, and how you govern the projects, all that are defined under the internal environment. And external environment, the factor that is not in your control, that is external to the organizations, and that sometimes impact the outcomes. So government policies, norms, cultures, sometimes you have a dependency on the logistic, your vendors, and all that are an external environment. Let's discuss one by one. Here, try to understand, we are just giving some indicative list that can be many more things, but let's discuss one by one the indicative list. That is, first would be the process asset. Now, process asset would be your tools, techniques, templates, methodology, sometimes that provided by the PMO. All those are falls under the process assets that sometimes helpful for your organization, sometimes become a bureaucratic. So that is a process asset. Corporate that governance document, that how the corporate governance will define your policies and the procedures, how would be the governing mechanism set that is related to your governance document. Data asset would be your data metrics, your data assets that come from the past project experience, lessons learned, all the documentation, that archived files, your issue register, risk register that you can help for other project references, all that are your data assets. Knowledge assets, that is the knowledge repository created for your organizations, the lessons learned, or in the knowledge assets, that is the tacit knowledge. Sometimes we need to understand what is the difference between data, information, knowledge, and the wisdom. That we will cover in some other session, but try to understand here in the knowledge assets how the knowledge of your peers, your colleagues, that is not sometimes documented, or that you need to learn from them, or how you can make a process learning forum that help you to knowledge sharing. So that all falls under the knowledge assets. The security and the safety, that is how the organization relate the data protections, like your confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the data. Sometimes some organization secrets that should not be passed, so that some non-disclosure agreement you have signed, and how you maintain all that are the security and safety of the data. Organization culture, structure, and the governance, that is related to your vision, mission, statement, your belief of the organization, your leadership, how it's impact the culture of the organization, that bring energy and synergy between the staff. They should not work in the silos, they work with the team spirit, and they give a high return. So that's all the productive teams, that is your organization culture. Geographical distribution and facility of the resources, because nowadays in the global conglomerate, the teams are scattered across the globe. Sometimes they are connected by means of co-location. Sometimes the distributed work from home or work-life balance, that the telecommunication and other infrastructure help you to work, facilitate your employees, that environment, that is your geographical distribution. Infrastructure, that's an holistic idea, that your office infrastructure, civil building, your facilities, your cafeteria, your furniture, and other things you are providing to your staff, that is an infrastructure. Information technology software, there are many softwares, the few names like your enterprise resource mapping and planning software, your SAP, how you manage them, your project software like Trello and other things that help you to govern and manage the project program portfolio in a very efficient manner. That's all falls under this category of internal environmental factors. Then resource availability. Resource availability, I am just giving you a very broad view here. Resource availability is not limited to the human resource, but material resource, and how you manage that resources are available on the right time for the right project. So that you have to negotiate with external stakeholders. Sometimes you have to have an agreement, and how you can manage that resources, procurement, contract part, all that falls under the internal environment. Employee capabilities, how that is the knowledge resource. So how you manage that resources, your employees would be skill built, your core competencies of your employees, how you can provide them infrastructure, the learning mechanism by which they can provide a good productive environment to the entire ecosystem. That all are the internal environment. External environment, there are many. I just indicating here few of them, like market condition. Market condition would be your competitors, how they are having the strategies against you, what are their market share, and how the as we are living in a VUCA world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, in the cutthroat competition, how you survive. That's all are related to the market condition. Social and cultural influences, that are many, the demographic, the nation, the religious you are having, and that's belief, the political environment, the code of conduct, certain customs that favor to the project environment, certain religious beliefs that some people, as we are in a project, we are working with the cross-cultural and the team, so we have to understand sometimes cultural shock of other peoples. We should take care, we have that awareness, we should not hurting some other people's belief, and how productively we can help to each other. That's all are your external environment. Regulatory environment, as that imposed by some government and some other regulatory bodies, like in the COVID pandemic, most of the government imposed the lockdown and other things, and the way it's impact the entire ecosystem, the COVID appropriate behavior, the code of conduct, and all that are impacting your project things. Commercial database, that is how certain organizations are having a ranking, the risk profiles, and all that stuff is impacting your reputations, and that will make impact on the external factors that related to the organization. academic research, that is something which is very useful, because every day there are so many innovations are happening, and some innovations are making your organization helpful, some innovations are destructive because they are helping other organizations, like the traditional storage mechanism will destructed by software defined storage and all that thing. So academic research will helpful, because in a near future it will come to the industry, and that it's changed the entire paradigm. Industrial standards, that is constantly evolving, and that helpful for organization. If I give you an example with automobile industry, so in that engine there earlier it was BS4 standards, they are migrated to now BS6 standards, so that improvement that also. And same with the automobile industries, the trend is now from the oil to they are that petrol and gasoline, they are shifting to the electric motor vehicles, so that will also helping and sometimes it's damaging the organization if you are not moving with that industrial trend. Financial consideration with many things like dollar rate, the reverse repo, the banking system rate, and oil prices that are changing and fluctuating in the market, and accordingly your the entire logistics system, if you're having a higher dependency, that is impacting your organization. So that also you need to consider that how you are working with environment and intercoordination with all that things that sometimes help you. So you have to have a risk mitigation strategy for all of them. Physical environment would be many things, like your office setup, the weather condition that have helpful for you, or sometimes it's impacting you. So these are the indicative list of internal and external environment, but in reality it would be many things you have to take care. We are discussing about the product management consideration. So this is very interesting, because this particular topic, that is product management consideration, that's first time in the PMBOK version 7. In our earlier edition that was not the part of the PMBOK, but that is something that is the need of an hour, that is the requirement of an industry that is more agile, and we have to have a holistic view, and that is more focused on the value delivery, and that's the reason we need to understand about the product management life cycle. So before discussing about the product management consideration, let's discuss about the product. So what is the product? So product is an artifact that is produced, is quantifiable, and it can be either an end item itself or a component of the holistic item. So that is the product. And what product management involves the integration of the people, data, and business processes in the system to create and maintain and develop a product or a service throughout the life cycle. So that is the product management. And the most important, the product management life cycle, that is a series of phases that represent the evolution of the product, from the integration, then growth, maturity, and the retirement. So let's discuss the product life cycle. That is the very important things, that point of view of the PMBOK version 7. So as you see over here, there is two axes. The x-axis represents the time phase in which the different phases of the product life cycle, from the introduction, then growth, then maturity, and finally retirement or decline of the that particular product. And at that time, sometimes the new product will be inserted. And on the y-axis, if you check over here, there are different projects, usages, then sales, and the impacts on the y-axis. So with that consideration, the entire product life cycle sometimes governed by the portfolio governance, that having a subsection of program A and the program B, that is a group of interlinked projects in that particular program area. If wanted to case of project 1, that is the introduction or launch of the product, in the introduction section or introduction phase of the product life cycle. The project 2 would be to add some more features into the product based on the need of an hour or time. And then project 3, that is adding more features. That all these 3 projects comes under the program A, and this program A is a part of the bigger portfolio. Now on the maturity, there is a different project 4, 5, 6, that is a revision of the different projects. And on declination, that retirement of the particular product, and you launch a new product. So that is the entire product life cycle. If the entire product life cycle, if I wanted to explain you with an example or with a case study. Let's discuss that with an Honda City example. So Honda City product life cycle is shown over here. That is Honda City life cycle in India. So Honda City first generation model launched in 1998. Then there is a cyclic curve of the development of that Honda City. So that declined by 2003, and at the time they launched the new second generation. That's for next 5 years. In 2008 they launched the third generation. On 2014 they launched the fourth generation. The recent generation, fifth generation, they launched in 2020. So that how the product life cycle maintained in the business. So that is the bigger consideration. Now there are different forms of the product management life cycle or product management. Different forms exist. There are different permutation and combination possible. So one would be, as you saw, the program management within the product life cycle. So that is where the approach incorporates related different projects or subsidiary programs or a project activities for a very large or a long running products. If I wanted to give you an example for such a program management within the product life cycle, let's consider the bigger product like BrahMos missile. So that would be a product which is highly complex, require a different project. So that longer duration require a program management within the product life cycle. Second example would be the project management within the product life cycle. So that is an approach oversee a development and maturing of a product capabilities in an ongoing business as usual activity to perform enhancement or improvement. So if I wanted to give you an example of the project management within the product life cycle, you can consider the different patches or software upgradation in iOS and all that thing. So the case study that iPhone 1, 2, 3 and all that developed, that you can consider the project management within the product life cycle. The other form would be the project management in a product management within a program. So that is the approach applies the full product life cycle within the purview and boundaries of a given program to apply the product management competencies like competitive analysis, customer acquisition and customer advocacy. So these are just an indicative list. Product management, there are different forums, there are different permutation and combination possible like portfolio portfolio into the product management life cycle, the project and program into the product life cycle, or product into the project or program life cycle. So there are different things here. Just for your sake of understanding, I just give a very high level requirements based on your organization or a demographic situation or a context that different permutation and combination can be possible. Now we are discussing product management different forum. Now product management itself a very vast and huge subject. By product management is a separate discipline with its own body of knowledge. Like PMBOK, there is a project management body of knowledge. There is other discipline that is a product management body of knowledge, and it represents the key integration point within the program management and the project management discipline. Here with the PMBOK version 7, we just have to understand of how this integration and the tailorings are possible with the different set of project and the product management life cycle. So program and project with deliverables that include product use a tailored and integrated approach that incorporates all the relevant bodies of knowledge and the related projects, practice methods and best artifacts. So that why PMI introduced the principles in the PMBOK version 7, because before that, from PMBOK version 1 to PMBOK version 6, there are different processes. In the PMBOK version 6, there are 49 such processes, and why they drastically change from the process-oriented project management framework to the principle-driven. So what is the importance of the principles and why it is required at this moment? So as you see over here, there is a radical change from the process-driven project management framework to the principle-driven project management framework. And why? Because we all are living in a VUCA world that is extremely volatile and uncertain, complex and ambiguous. Things are radically changing. If I wanted to give you an example, let's consider the Industrial Revolution. So in the Industrial Revolution first, that is based on the steam and mechanical things, the production is very manual. Then there is a shift from the Industrial Revolution 1 to the 2 that is based on the mass production through the assembly line and electrification of things. Then Industrial Revolution 3, that is based on the electronics, computers and other things. And now currently we are living in Industrial Revolution 4, that is IoTs and other things. There is a virtual line in a very fusion of all the technologies, and that is the reason that things are not remain the constant, things are changing. So if we are following the processes that is defined a decade ago, and that is very bureaucratic processes, that is rigid processes, then there is very painful experience to execute the things. So in that environment, the focus is remain to process following, but they are forget the outcomes. And that is the reason there are many projects are collapsed. They are, for the compliance part, they will manage the boundaries, but they are not getting the business output. So what is the solution? We have to define the principles, that is what we wanted to achieve, how we wanted to achieve, and based on these principles we define the processes. So if tomorrow you wanted to change certain processes based on the demand of the hours, or some processes are become redundant or not useful for your project, in that case you change those processes, but underlying principles remain intact. So there is the very useful environment needs to be created, and that is the reason why PMBOK 7 come up with the principles driven approach, because now there is a high time for us to come up with a solution that is required to execute the project, and that is the reason value delivery. So before we understand different principles, let's understand what is the dictionary meaning of the principles. So it says that a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or behavior or for chain of reasoning. So this is a guiding principles, we said, that will give us a direction or guidance how to do the things. That is not rigidly. So any principles you take, there are some basic characteristics remain intact. The acronym to remember what are the basic characteristics associated with the principles, that is USE. U stand for universal. So all principles are universals, means principles that can be applicable irrespective of the industry in which you are working, whether you are executing project of a civil industry or civil project, or you are doing IT software development project, or you are launching a satellite. So irrespective of what would be the industry, your principles remain intact. There is self-validating. Self-validating means whatever the principles, there should not be a cross or conflicts between the principles. So there is a self-validating characteristic. And empowering. The person or the organization who is following those principles, that will give them empowerment to definitely execute the project in a good manner. So these are the three characteristics required to manage the principles. Now we are discussing what are the different popular principles. So it is not like that before the PMP there are no principles. So as you see over here, that 7 principles are based, given by the Prince2, they are based on the 7 principles. Then Lean is also having the 7 principles. We are not going in detail of what are the 7 principles of the different things, but I just wanted to give you an overview, an idea or high level idea that these are the principles. Like in Agile Manifesto, they are also following that 12 principles, and PMP with the PMBOK 7, which recently launched in 2021, they also come up with the 12 principles. So this 7 or 12 might seem like magical numbers, but this is really useful that they had covered all that aspects. And these 12 principles, there are many myths that we are going to be bust. So first, there is no ascending or descending orders. You need to remember all these principles, and there is no weightage that one principle is very high value and other principles. So there are principles are for professionals that serve as the foundational guideline for strategic decision making and problem solving. Principles can but not necessarily reflect the morals. For moral values, we have a code of conducts or ethics that related to the morals. The PMI ethics and the professional conducts is based on the 4 values. So I just want to give you a clarity, because most of the time people get confused with the PMI code of conducts and the principle, but there is not necessary. So this PMI code of conducts or ethics are based on these 4 values, that is responsibility, respect, fairness, and the honesty. So these 12 principles of project management are aligned with the values defined in the PMI code of conduct, but that not necessary to follow the same format, and they are not duplicative. Rather than PMI principles and the code of ethics are complementary with each other. So the 12th principle of PMBOK version 7. So today we are deep in dive of the principle 1, that is stewardship. So what do you mean by the stewardship? Stewardship, this particular slide we took from the PMBOK version 7. So that means be diligent, respectful and caring steward. So what do you mean by that? It is an very analogical idea about stewardship is you need to take a responsibility. So sometimes in the project management, a project manager having very deliverable based mindset, they don't care about other aspects or contextual things related to the projects, and they don't care about that things. So that attitude needs to be changed with the PMBOK version 7, and that's particular principle, the stewardship. You have to be diligent, respectful and caring the entire ecosystem inside and the outside. So let's discuss in detail about the stewardship. So stewardship encompasses responsibility both within and outside the organization. So inside the organization, it's contain what are the responsibility, and the outside the organization, what are the responsibility you have to be demonstrate, that we are going to discuss. So inside the organization, you have to align with your organization strategy, vision and the mission. So you not need to be compromised on that part. That is the responsibility you have to demonstrate. Second, you have to have that commitment for the fair treatment for the entire ecosystem or whomsoever associated with you in your team, that you have to be take care, and you diligently oversee the organization resources, that no resources should be compressed or suppressed, or they should be equally fairly treated. That is your holistic understanding by means of the stewardship. And you have to appropriately use the authority power assigned to you. So being a project manager, you have that legitimate power, but you have not need to misuse this power. So that is required by means of the stewardship. You should be very fair when using or imposing that power of your stewardship. You should be not compromise on that part. And the outside the organization, you have to be take the environmental sustainability, that you have to be treated well the entire ecosystem. You have to take the external stakeholder, not just to the client, but the vendors, suppliers, the whole eco chain you have to be take care, and the society, community or regions in which you are implementing your project, so that you have to be take care that that particular community should not be compromised. And advancing the state of the practice in professional industry, that you have to contribute back to the community, to the project management practices as a whole, so that all things you need to be take care. Certain keywords by which you can recall this stewardship is your integrity, care, trustworthiness, compliances. So these are the 4 keywords which help you to recall the value system derived by this particular principle. So what do you mean by the integrity? It is the honesty and the ethics that you have to be demonstrate. So that is integrity. Empathy for the society, for the resources involved with your or community as a large. Self-reflectiveness, so you should have that holistic idea. You should be contemplate that what you are doing is right or wrong. So that is emotional intelligence you have to be utilized. You have to have that awareness of your own emotions and the emotions of your team. You have to accept the open feedback from the team. You should not have that egoistic mindset. That is means by the integrity. Care, that you have to be diligently oversee the matter beyond the strictly defined responsibility. That means that you should not be think in the silos. You should not think that okay, you have to think only this that directional mindset. No, it is not. You have to have that open mind. You have to go one step beyond and think for the entire community, that you have to take care of all stakeholders involved with your projects, and concern for the people with your inside organization or outside organization, that you have to demonstrate by care, trustworthiness and to raise the concern without the fear. So sometimes it may happen that you are facing the conflict of interest. So you not need to be dilute your independent opinion in that process. You have to raise the concern without fear whenever it's required in the project. Trustworthiness represent your and your team accurately with the authority. You should not manipulate them. Means sometimes it may not happen that you are manipulating the rosy picture or manipulating the things which is not happening. It is the trustworthiness that you should represent the correct picture to the authority or whomsoever asked, and make decisions appropriately for something. That is by means of the trustworthiness, and protect the projects from breaches of trust across the ecosystem. That is the trustworthiness. And the compliances, you have to comply with the laws, rules and regulation of that particular land. Means sometimes it may happen that particular project is in some remote area and there are rules and regulations. You should respect the countries in which your project is governed. So that is my means of the stewardship. So these are the keywords which you need to recall to remember this particular principle. It may happen that you might be confused that this is related to the code of ethics. Yes, it is related to code of ethics, but it is not code of ethics. Code of ethics is the statement of guiding things that is documented, but it is the qualities that you need to demonstrate, the behavioral aspects of the code of ethics, that is the stewardship principles that is expected by the project management community, that as a project manager you have to demonstrate this aspect of the stewardship. To make it easy for you to understand, I had indicating certain examples, like the example of the air hostess is showcasing the stewardship. So in the flight, you have traveled from one source to the destination. So you can fly without the air hostess as well. But air hostess provide that comfort level. She take care of, or she will taking care of the all passengers who is flying. So without air hostess you can fly, but air hostess make your life easy. So that is the quality a project manager should demonstrate for the team to the stakeholder to make their life. Here he or she needs to take care of the people associated with the project. One good example, like the nurturing the plant. So you have to take care of the entire plant. You have to take care of whether it get proper water, sun rays, or each and everything. So how we nurture the plant to bigger tree, the same quality we have to demonstrate by means of the stewardship, the way we grow the family. So certain aspects which you demonstrate in your family value system, you have to be demonstrate the same into the stewardship in the project aspects. So there is nothing new, because you might think that this is something what you know from very beginning, that why it's introduced by the PMI this time, because we know many things, but it is not the way we are implementing. So PMI wants to put emphasis on how we demonstrating. It's require massive efforts to implement this stewardship principle in the ecosystem in which you are working. The second principle, that is the team, that you need to understand. You might think that is so obvious, that what's the new thing in that. So here I just wanted to make it very simple for you, that create a collaborative project team environment. That is very important. It's play a very pivotal role. Now, if you think that you have a good team spirit, you are working with each other, sometimes you go outside for lunch, dinner, hangout, and many things. So that is means of the true team spirit by a PMI. Yes, but I just wanted to make the intent very clear over here, that is the different skill set working, or that is a professional team spirit, that a different skill set people working for the common goal or objective of the organization. That is the team spirit, and that is required for you to achieve the organization goals, that all diversified team working on the common objective of the organization. So how are you going to achieve, and what are the certain concepts that you should have that clarity in your mind to achieve that team spirit to improve the productivity. So here it's mentioned over here, like team agreement, organization structures, and the processes are required to develop that team spirit, or I can say the culture barrier is the highest that you have to be overcome to achieve the team spirit. So team agreement, it is a set of behavior parameter, or we can set a ground rules, so that there is a diversified skill set, there is a diversified team who belongs from different nations, sometimes different religions, working together, and they have a soft corner or emotional sentiment for their religion or certain things. So you should respect the team members, the different spiritual practices in which they are belongs to. So that ground rule you need to be set from the very beginning, that you should respect that, so in future there is no conflict or any dispute needs to be raised. So you have to set certain ground rules, that you should respect each other's value system. You should some culture aspects that you have to be sometimes create shocks that you need to be avoided by setting set ground rules. Working norms established by the project team, and these ground rules need to be set in the very beginning, and throughout the project life cycle you keep on adding those things that add value for improving your team's spirit or team capabilities. Organization structure, that is the hierarchy, who reports to whom, the chain of command, the defined roles and responsibilities, so that there is no blame game should happen at the later on, that you should have a very defined clear-cut roles and responsibilities. Certain formal committees needs to be created for managing the teams and standing meetings and all that, and the processes that define that task and how you're going to execute those tasks. That well-defined processes also help to build a good team capabilities and the team spirit. So this is certain concept by which we can improve the team spirit. And the culture improvement, so it says that good culture eat strategies in the breakfast. So here the culture is very important. Though you have a good strategy, but the organization culture, it's not that professional, or you have some internal conflict, dispute, or some vicious political things are there, then it would be very difficult to execute certain strategies in your organization. So you have to work on how you can make your culture very robust and transparent, integrated, so that you can achieve the things. And to make such culture, you have to have that authority, accountability, and responsibility. Certain tools you can utilize, like RASI matrix. So RASI matrix, I just wanted to elaborate over here. That is the responsibility, accountability, consult and inform. That is responsibility assignment matrix, that by which you can, if you say check over here, that the clear-cut responsibility and ownership assigned to the person. In certain refinery industries, they use RASI matrix, in which they add support as also a concept, so that for each and every activities or task, the task owner is clearly defined, who responsible for executing that task is also defined, whom need to consult or take an advice, or whom need to inform, that is clearly defined for each and every task. That really help to have a very homogeneous team spirit. Now I just wanted to elaborate in detail with an example of the football or soccer, that it's a diversified team. Each and every player, there is 11 players, including the goalkeeper, has the different skill set, and this skill set are working for a common goals they wanted to achieve. So there are a goalkeeper, the forwarder, and the defender who take the strike and all that. So each and every one have a different skill set they respect, and they work for the common goal that they wanted to win the game. So similarly, in the organization, the different skill set team needs to work for the common organization goal to achieve, and if that spirit is to be conveyed, it's required the project manager to convey this organization objective, strategies, mission, and how they align by this project. So communication is very important attributes required to convey the team spirit, and its work culture is also very important for establish a good team spirit and the leadership quality of the project managers. So it is the responsibility of the project manager that he can choose a good team to execute the task assigned to him. So that is the analogy I wanted to set over here, that how we can achieve by means of this particular principle. The third principle, that is the stakeholder. So what do you mean by the stakeholder? Stakeholder, it's defined that any one or any person or a group of the person whose interests are impacted, that might be positively or negatively because of your project, that are in define of the stakeholder. Now, here by this particular principle, we might want to draw attention. The keyword is engage, that effectively engage with the stakeholder. Now, stakeholder is not like someone who you can manipulate. You have to engage them in your project. Like in a chessboard, they are not a piece or a pawns that you can manipulate and that not give you a long-term benefit, right? So certain times you might manipulate to showcase them a rosy picture, but that is having a long-term consequences, that you lose that customer or a client. So you have to engage them effectively. That is the intention of this particular principle, that stakeholder effectively engage with the stakeholder. And how we can effectively engage the stakeholder? First of all, you need to understand who are your stakeholder. I just wanted to elaborate, like I want to give an example that these are the two competitors. So let's consider the PepsiCo want to launch a new soft drink in the next financial year. So who are the stakeholder for this? Entire ecosystem of their client, their investors, the workers and all that. But one more stakeholder, that is the Coca-Cola. They have to keep or maintain the secrecy of that particular project, that should not be aware that or there is a risk if that secrecy leak, that Coca-Cola might be come up with different certain products that might impact the entire things. So that is the holistic understanding. So this picture give you a very high level understanding that who are the stakeholders. They might be internal, externals. So consider it's not like the team working in that particular project in that office is your only stakeholder. Certain stakeholder might be sit in a different corner of the planet, but still they impact or they influence your work by sitting over there. So you have to closely monitor them. Then and then you can able to devise a strategy to engage them, and then you can work in a proper direction. So how we can understand the stakeholder? First of, you need to analyze them. So if you check over here on the x-axis, there are interest grid, that what are the stakeholder, what's their interest in our project. On the y-axis there is a power grid, what's their influence or power on the project. So certain stakeholder on this quadrant, they called key players who have high power and high interest. So you have to engage and manage actively those stakeholders, because at any given point of the time they will change or impact, or their interest, if you are not keep maintain, the project outcome would be, or certain key stakeholders like your client, your suppliers. So suppose your suppliers stop providing you the raw material and your deadlines might be changed. So you have to manage or engage with those stakeholders effectively. And certain are direct or indirect stakeholders are also there, like apart from your project, in the COVID pandemic, we had observed that government play an indirect. So they come up with laws and regulations like quarantine and other things by which they indirectly influence your project. So that is an indirect stakeholder, and it is may possible the type of the stakeholder may change from time to time. Right now in the beginning they are positive, at the end they might be negative. So these all things you need to take care. The second quadrant, what we are discussing about, the context setter, or we can say that who has a high power but they have a low interest in your project, that we call, you need to satisfy them their needs and certain a crowd, like they have low power and low interest in your project, so just keep on monitoring them. These are the stakeholder. And the last quadrant, that having a high interest but a low power, they are defender, they are supporting your project, so you have to keep them informed about the project progress and all that thing. So these are the power interest grid analysis by which you can do analysis of the stakeholder, and accordingly you can define the strategy to engage the different stakeholder. Now there is a stakeholder engagement assessment matrix, what I had listed over here. So these are the different level of engagement. They are unaware about your project, certain are resistant about your project, certain are neutral about your project, certain are supportive to your project, and certain are champion or leaders leading your project. So as you see, the stakeholder 1, their C stand for the current engagement level and D stand for desired engagement level. So stakeholder 1 has a unaware engagement level and you want him to support your project, that is a desire. So how you map this gap, that is the reason you have to develop and define a strategy for that. Stakeholder 2 is a neutral current stage, but you want to shift him to the desired, and the stakeholder 3 whose current and the desired engagement level is the same. So you just need to keep maintain the strategy. So this is how we have to define the strategies to manage the different stakeholders. Ultimately, by this particular principle is indicating how we engage the stakeholder throughout the project life cycle, not just the beginning, but throughout and the stakeholder also change. Certain stakeholders are there in initiation of the projects, they might be changed, certain other stakeholder may be added. So you have to keep on tracking and monitoring them throughout the project life cycle. Otherwise what happens that you're not aware what's going on in their mind, you become a blindfolded and it may disturb your entire project's goals. So that you have to be very mindful about the stakeholder. You have to do the stakeholder analysis periodically to understand what's going on in the minds of the stakeholder and what they want to achieve. So hello friends and the profession. As you are aware that we are discussing the 12 principles given in the PMBOK version 7, today we are discussing the fourth one, that is focus on the value. We are discussing in detail and deep in dive of the value, focus on the value principle. Let's begin. So as you check over here, this particular principle, focus on the value, it is so important that is one of the major change or the value system. The second chapter then added to focus on the value. And why it is so important that before that, I think in the iron triangle, the past, the project manager focused on the scope, time, and cost. That is the iron triangle, the performance parameter. The project should complete it. They measure the project that it should be completed within the timeline, within the budget, and the scope that should be matched. So that is the way they measure the project success. But in the today's era, as we are living in the VUCA world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, in this, the value that if you project complete within that performance triangle, that within the time, within the budget, and within the scope, but if it's not deliver the value, that means that the strategic objective, why the organization invested in that project, then it is no use. So you should not focus on that matching the iron triangle, but you should focus on creating and delivering the value, and that is the reason this particular principle put that it should be continually evaluated and adjust the project alignment to the business objective and intended benefits for delivering the value. And how this benefit value can be achieved, that we can check over here, like a business need to start the particular project justification and the business strategy. So I wanted to give you a picture that your project to develop this particular pointer. So that is a business need, and you started investing and you check that whether the project is rational for developing that, explaining why the project is undertaken, and understand the business drivers to identify the opportunities or problem there is a market demand, and you start developing this particular pointer. But after the time this particular pointer you develop, but this particular pointer you come within the timeline that within 3 months you wanted to develop, and you develop within 3 months. The cost, let's say $10, you prepare this and sell in the market. But when you launch this and this pointer is not working, the value what it's required to use for, if it's not used by the customer, that it's completely waste. So that is not delivering the value, and the value is not pursued by you being a project manager. It should be, you should focus on the client value perception, that when your client say that okay, this is a good product, then and then it is really acknowledged. So you should focus on developing a value system for the client, so that their organization focus on delivering that. So that is the ultimate understanding. So sir, sometimes what happens, the project managers are so attached with the project that they are not focusing the higher value to the organization's strategic objectives. Suppose I wanted to give you an example. Suppose you are working with the project where you wanted to establish the telephone, produce the early days that thing, but now the entire communication is shifted to the mobile, but you are still focused on producing that, and that is creating no value for the ecosystem. So that is emotional barrier. Because of that, you are not able to achieve the growth for the organization. So focus on the value. This is the principle which indicate that if your project is no longer producing the value for the organization, you should stop investing in that particular project rather than investing the organization resources, so that you have evaluated throughout the project life cycle. And if you think that at any given of the point the project is no longer matching, achieving the strategic objective or delivering any value, you should stop investing in that particular project. I just wanted to give you a very high level understanding that how this entire value system impacting the project. So let's consider the output. I want to give you an example that what is the output, that is the product that you use. Let's consider the example, you wanted to develop a software which producing the sales system. So that software is an output, but using this output you are not able to achieve the strategic objective. The strategic objective to increase the revenue of the organization. But once you started using this particular software, you started that the software you develop, it creates so many confusion in the organization, because you not develop the capabilities to utilize the software. So you have to develop capabilities by providing the training, documentation, so that you started working and utilizing this particular product. That is your output. So once you started utilizing that output, change in the organization, that says as outcome. So you reduce the processing time, and that is in turn develop the benefits that is measurable, that you reduce the processing time and improve the organization revenue. So that is the benefit. So these are the keywords that you need to recall to map the value chain. And where your project is fit in entire value chain, let's consider the strategic objective which you mandate to define the project vision, program vision, that in turns define the project, that where to invest and what to invest. This project develop the capabilities, that utilize the capabilities, develop the benefits, that benefits are in turn align with your strategic objective. So this is the way the entire value system your project is fitting. So you have to have that entire the value chain in your mind, and you work on focusing on delivering some value to the project. So I wanted to give one example which make you very clear that the value is not just focused after the project. You should have focused the value delivery throughout the project lifecycle, and that is the reason your Scrum and Agile practice comes in the picture, where they focus on value delivery in the implementation process, so that give a more return on the investment. So just focus on the example given over here, that you wanted to develop a thermal power station that required 5 years and it's cost you $10 million US. So after the 5 years, once your project is handed over into the operations team and they started generating electricity, on the 6th year you get a revenue of 1 million, on the 7th year it's 2 million, on the 8th year it would be 5 million. So your return on investment for this particular project is get after 6 or 7 years, and then you start generating profit. So you should track this value throughout in after the project handed over to the operation team. Your business team manager should periodically review and assess whether you are getting that value from the project or operation or not, and that is the focus on value. That is the principles they wanted to indicate and put more priority. That earlier it was okay that you should focus that how you measure the project success by achieving the iron triangle, but with the time it's need of an hour, that you should focus on more value delivery that help the organization to flow in a direction to achieve the strategic objective. With the project manager, it's your responsibility that you should map that value, and if you measure that value, that whether you are achieving that value or not, and if you think that you are not aligned with your strategic objective, then without emotionally attached with the project, you should map with your PMO, and you should stop investing in the project which is no longer achieving that strategic objective or value delivery for your project. So this is the principle that focus on the value. It is most important, and I request all of you to pay attention during your project execution, that whether your project is serve the purpose where it was started. So you have to measure the return on investment, and sometimes it's not possible to measure this in a quantifiable. Certain benefits are intangible, but you have to find a way to measure this impact on the social society at large, so that you can make sure that you are delivering value to the community at large. So these principles are focusing on value delivery, and this is principles that throughout the project life cycle you need to focus. The fifth principle, that is system thinking. So system thinking, first of all you need to understand what is the system thinking. So consider the project, it's not execute in a vacuum, right? So your project is a subset of a bigger thing, or your organization, right? Or your organization is a part of the business or industry. That industry is a part of the bigger ecosystem, or a country. That country is a part of the global consortium, and many more. So now there are many things that interdependent or interlinked. Consider the project is a gear of the bigger machine that are functioning. So if one thing impacted, that impact other things as well. Like consider the project in which you are working, the government norms change, the regulatory bodies change, the crude oil price change may also get impact the entire ecosystem. So if a project manager, you have a very myopia view that this is your project boundary, and you are not seeing beyond that boundary, and you are thinking that or assuming that you just need to be focused on the ecosystem or deliver that particular project. But if you are not having a binocular to see what is happening beyond that boundary, that might be impacting your project deliverables, not today but in the near future, then you should have a strategy to mitigate those risks or the threats. Consider the example like if you are so engaged in developing a product of CD drive and other things, but the technology that we change in the ecosystem, if you are not interacting and having a market view, you are interacting with your sales and marketing team, then this particular product what you are delivering, that might be not relevant for a longer time. So you have to improve and change accordingly. The good example like the earlier days, there is a Kodak camera coming, so they are not invent and innovate in that domain, and that they get perished. Like pagers, nowadays everyone has a cell phone, and tomorrow might be new things are coming, but you have to keep yourself updated by interacting and get informed and understanding the holistic picture of the entire ecosystem, that how each things are interlinked or interact with each other, what are the factors globally, nationally, culturally, or what are the new trends that impact your project. So that we call system thinking. So you are not considering your project as an independent isolated things, but you are considering your project as a part of the bigger system. So that system of system what we call. Now why we use a system thinking? The best example that system thinking is used to solve the complex or wicked problems, that and how we can solve this complex and wicked problems, that it expands your range of the choices available. It helps us to articulate the problem in a new and different ways, so that we have bigger options available with us. At the same time, the participant of the system thinking make aware that there are no perfect solutions, so we have to adjust with what available solution with us, that is we have to go with an optimum solution. We cannot wait for indefinite or indefinite time. The choices what we are making will have an impact on other ecosystem or other projects. So that is, as we are living in a so interconnected world, so whatever we are choosing, that is an opportunity cost for that. So all that things you have to consider that help us to take a very informed decision or choices. How we are going to use this system thinking? For that you need to understand and kind of iceberg model what I say. So as you see here, the iceberg. So in the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, that is only we can see, but beyond the surface there is something which we even bigger problem is 30% you see the tip of the iceberg, but 70% that is below the surface of the water, that you need to understand. Like in the iceberg model, as you see the events that you are easily identify that something happened, but why this happened, you have to understand what are the pattern, that the train what is going on, and this is just a trigger point in terms of the event. What are the support structure that create those patterns, and what are the mental models that support that support structure, that only you need to understand. So let me explain this, how to use this system thinking. First, don't try to do blame game, avoid blame game, please. Instead of asking who made this mistake, ask what is about this problem that we don't understand. So we need to understand first what is about that particular problem of this particular iceberg. You understand the tip of the iceberg, but what you don't understand, you try to understand that. Don't attempt to solve the problem immediately, right? It's not able to understand the problem in a night or so, right? Get the full story out by understanding what are the different patterns that trends of that, what are the structures and what are the mental blocks that in turn create that particular problem. So you have a different viewpoints to understand this event, right? So don't jump and try to come up with a biased idea that this is the problem, this is the reason for that. Try to understand different options. Okay. Finally, welcome different viewpoints that are creating, or instead of assuming that everyone has the same points, try to get a different viewpoints from the different stakeholders, do a brainstorming exercise, and after that come up with the solution that accepted by the one who are going to implement that. So this is the way you can implement the system thinking. So in a conclusion of the system thinking, don't react on the events that you see over here. That is a tip of an iceberg. But you have to decodify what are the patterns, what are the trends that create that event to happen. Then you further deep dive to understand what are the structure or solution that is creating what are this particular pattern. And then you try to understand the mental models that advocating this particular support structure that in turn creating that pattern and that trigger the event, so that you can have a holistic idea to solve that particular problem that is complex in a nature. Supports skills that support the system thinking, system view of the project. That is first, empathy with the business areas. The second thing that you have a critical thinking with a bigger picture focus on your own. Then you have to challenge the assumption and the mental models. Sometimes what we have prejudiced mindset. So you have to challenge that in adopting that principle and see what are the external, internal, and what are the external critics and what's their review on that. You have to take a collective 360-degree approach and use this integrated artifacts and take a practice by which you can inculcate all those viewpoints, use of modeling and scenarios that to ensure that system are demystified and you have a holistic understanding. And finally, proactive management is required to implement the system thinking. So with that skill set, you can implement the system thinking. The leadership principle. So the sixth principle, leadership, that is very, very important, and it's very near to my heart because I had personally felt that this is something, the principle which make or break your project delivery. In my experience, I come many times across when the leadership are define the project success, or sometimes it impact the delivery disaster risk. So let's understand the leadership principle in detail. So leadership, what do you mean by the leadership? Leadership is the quality by which you can empower your team to work together to achieve the common goal. That is the leadership. And many people get confused leadership with authority or the power. It's not right, because I had seen many people who have the authority but don't have that leadership quality, and vice versa. Many people who don't have that authority and power, but still they have leadership quality by which they encourage and motivate the team to work for common goals and objectives. And leadership is not the case where you can apply each and every life cycle of the project. Leadership is also vary from situation and based on the many parameters. Let me deep dive to the different leadership style and how you can apply. So as you've seen over here, that is the leadership spectrum. The first would be the autocratic, or we call dictatorial leadership style. A good example, Hitler, where a leader dictate his terms. It's kind of my way or highway. There is no negotiation. He is not taking feedback every time from the subordinate or from the team. So it is a very rigid structure. The second leadership style, what we call laissez-faire or hands-off kind of leadership. A good example would be Warren Buffett, in which every year he assigned the target to his team and don't interfere in between. So he delegate the task, and he just needs to review after the year. So that is kind of hands-off or laissez-faire leadership style. The third leadership that we call a democratic or a servant leadership, in which a leader is provide an ecosystem to the team to achieve best of them. A good example would be the Mother Teresa and many other servant leaders. In the agile kind of things, it is required, it's demanding that we should perform a leadership of servant leadership kind, where we provide an ecosystem to the team to flourish. The fourth one, that is a transactional leadership that we call goal-oriented leadership, in which a leader either reward the team to achieve the goals, or he threaten the team if they are not able to perform. A good example, what I personally believe, that Donald Trump would be a good example of the transactional leadership. And the fourth one, that is a transformational leadership, in which we can encourage, innovate, and creatively enables the change. They are the transformational leader. A good example would be the Mahatma Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, Nelson Mandela, and many more. They are changing the entire landscape. They are changing the mindset of the people. They are the change agent that we call the transformational leadership. So now these are the different leadership styles, but I am not advocating one leadership over other. There is pros and cons of each leadership. Based on the given situation, you have to perform either of the leadership which is best suited in that given situation. If I wanted to give an example, like if you have faced the time constraint and you have to deliver the things within that time constraint, you don't have the time to deliberate and discuss and get consent from all stakeholders. At that given point of the time, autocratic or dictatorial approach would be best suited. But again, that depends on case to case and situation to situation. But these are the different modes or styles of the leadership that can be utilized. One good example of the situation leadership, that is the leadership styles that we call situation leadership models or theory, given in 1968 by the organization behavior research scientists Hersey and Blanchard, that they introduced in this model. So first they called directing. When you have a team who are very enthusiastic beginner but very low competencies and high commitment to achieve the goals, at that time you can have a directing kind of leadership where you can support less but direct them towards achieving the goal. The second example of this research model that we call coaching. So when your team have a disillusioned learner, they have some sort of competencies but having a low commitment for the goals or your target to achieve. At the time you coach them, you can support them, you can direct them, you handhold them to achieve that higher objectives or goal of the organization. The third one that we call supporting kind of structure. So it is when you have capable but cautious performers. So when you have very high competent team but they don't have that commitment to work for the goals. So what you need to do, you try to emotionally use kind of creating an environment where you can encourage them, motivate them, where you can correlate your organization objective to their life goal, and that way you can change their commitment. That is a supporting kind of role you have to play in the leadership style. And the fourth one that we call delegating. When you have self-reliant achievers, a team who have very high competency and they are high committed to the goal. So at the time, it's not required you to involve in each and every small step or do you micromanagement. At the time, it's your responsibility to delegate the task to the team and enjoy the show, means how they are performing. So that is delegation. So they have that self-confidence and you empower them to achieve the bigger and better things. So these are the situational based leadership style approach that you have to apply based on the given situation. How the role of leadership in the project management. These are the ways, means you can empowering the team, you have to show them a vision, you have to ask a kind of question, you have to listen carefully, active listening, what we call emotional questions you have to develop, emotional intelligence you have to use to interact with the team. You sometimes need to influence the team to achieve the goal, communicate regularly and frequently to understand what is the state of the mind, and strategize how you team, how together you can achieve the goal of the particular project. Team building exercise, and all together is you achieve the project's success. So this is the role of leadership in the project management. What PMBOK summarized, specifically the version 7, that leadership is the way to lead the team members and the stakeholders for the common goal, to achieve the common goal. And during this, you have to get the things done from the team members, manage with respect and trust. That is most important. That is one of the ethical responsibilities, that you have to behave with respect and trust with your team member, communicate and motivate and inspire them to achieve the goals for the organization, and maintain the vision, strategy and communication of the project performance. And finally, evaluate the performance of the team without any bias or any without any short of ego or bias. You have to evaluate and give the correct feedback to each and every team member so they can excel in their field. The tailoring principle. So as you are aware, tailoring is the principle that recently incorporated. So in the PMBOK version 6, that they have incorporated as one of the knowledge area, but now there is a full-fledged principle that incorporated in the newer version. So that shows the importance of the tailoring. Today's session, we are discussing what the tailoring is, why you need to incorporate tailoring, and what are the advantages of the tailoring. So, tailoring is required because you wanted to take the advantage. You are working, your organizations, your culture, your governance is completely different. It's not kind of repetitive in a nature. It's unique. So that's why it's not one size fits solution for everything. So that's the need that is required, that you can adopt the best possible project management methodology or an approach that is exactly match or fulfill the requirement of your organization or the particular culture or the environment in which you are applying those. So that is the reason we are putting that much importance and emphasis on the tailoring. Let's discuss in detail. Here the keyword what we had mentioned over here, that just enough approach is required, so that you not need to copy paste the entire whatever the processes, tools and techniques. You just need to take a references which is just enough for your project or for your organization to align your project goals and achieve the strategic objective of your organization. So let me deep dive to why we use the tailoring. As I said earlier as well, because each project is unique and the project success is based on adopting the unique method of producing the desired outcome. Tailoring approach is iterative and therefore it's not required that you need to take the tailoring at the beginning or at the end. You have to constantly connect with the tailoring approach. Let's understand that when to use the tailoring. Some example, like if you are projecting initiation stage, then you have to hear the season, like the tailor decide the best suited shirts for you, how we tailor made things instead of using the all fit size to all. In the planning phase, you decide what project management approach you wanted to go with, whether you wanted to go with Prince methodology, PMP, project management professionals that we use by PMI USA or TOGAF, or what the methodology you wanted to go with in your projects. And based on that, in the execution time also, sometimes it's not required that one size is fixed. Means sometimes you need to go with a hybrid things where you have to take one references, one processes from this framework and other processes so that you can deliver the result and finally close it. if I wanted to give you one example like predictive, adaptive, it's combined hybrid. We will discuss this in detail in the performance domain, but predictive is mostly used when you know that what is the end result, when your requirement is very much clear to all stakeholders, like to building the construction plan, all are very clear. At that time, we can go with the predictive approach, or what we call an waterfall methodology. But in the software development or research, when you don't have the clarity of end goal, or your requirement is not that clear, at the time it's preferred that you can go with an adaptive, so that you can play around with the things. And hybrid, it's a mix of both predictive and adaptive. Let's understand this with an example. Like if you wanted to come up with a new product design and build a project, then in initiation phase you can come up with the RFP, then in the planning phase you come up with the detailed project planning, that DPR will produce, and in execution it's conceptualization, then further fine-tune that, and then finally build. So that is a waterfall, sequential in nature, and finally you can go with final acceptance test and go. So this is a traditional waterfall approach. In a case 2, as mentioned earlier, if you wanted to go with a software development project, then initiation, planning, here you go with an iterative process. So you can go with the release, Scrum, Agile kind of project approach that will give you a good result. So that are the different project management methodology based on what exactly the project, your governance things. So what are the things, how you can specify which project life approach is best? So you have to answer this type of question, that what are the risks known to your projects, that based on that, what are the planning horizon, you are planning for 3 months or a 6 months, or what exactly the planning horizon you have in your mind, what are the organization governance approach, it kind of leadership involvement and other things, what are the decisions required for stakeholders, that their involvement, engagement with the project, and how frequently customer feedback to your projects. Sometimes they don't have that much time, they just involve in a phase get review. So based on that you can plan that. Can your products deliver in incrementals, or what does the project success means for your organization? So as we had discussed in the value delivery, that project success is not that gone are those days when we are discussing the project success measure on the iron target, scope, time, cost. But if your project success means to achieve the value delivery, then you can adopt or use the tailoring methodology based on that. So PMBOK summarize what are the advantages if you use the tailoring. That is, first, it's give you a deliver commitment for the team, because they involved in designing. You are not imposing that you have to go with this approach only. You give them a freedom, take their inputs, that what would be the best methodology according to that, and then you can constructively decide that restriction that reduce the waste in the team section and the resources, because you make it go with a lean approach. That customers oriented focus, because we are not copy pasting from other project management which is not relevant. We are doing what is the best suited and what is required for our project, and it's improve our productivity, it's improve the efficiency, and innovations are the key in the tailoring, and more efficient projects and resources utilization, and increase adaptability on a longer run. So these are the advantage if we are adopting a tailoring principles in our organization or in a project delivery. 8 principles, that is about the quality. And in the quality, we are specifically discussing about why it is required in a project management person, what are the different quality tools and the methods, what's the difference between QA and the QC, and many other things. So, quality, here we took this particular table from the PMBOK version 7, and it's critical, clearly mentioned that build quality into process and deliverables. Here you not need to wait till your bugs are come and the output is delivered. Here you involve and come up with the culture where you invest in the processes where you can build in quality or fit for purpose. So what do you mean by the quality? Quality is something which related to the fit for purpose and it's bug free. So quality, if I wanted to give you an example, that if I wanted to gift a smartphone to my grandmother, that is something which is not fit for purpose, which is not required, which is not her requirement is, right? She wants a small phone which is not a smartphone but that having a very key features that he can call and receive an SMS and with the board so she can read. So that is quality for her because her requirement is completely different. So most of the time people get confused and just drag away with the features, but it's not related to the quality. For quality, it is the requirement, and that requirement is fit for purpose. That is the quality. If we can provide that, that is what is requirement of the project. Let me clarify further. What is the quality management and control? So first needs to understand quality is fitness for purpose and the degree of conformance of the output or a process for the process itself to the requirement. What is quality control? Quality control is consists of your inspections, measurement, testing, verifying the project output or deliverables, and providing acceptance criteria. And it is focused to prevent the problems or errors to pass on to your customer. You can prevent at the execution level itself. And the quality planning is the definition of the scope and the specification or acceptance criteria, how you're going to maintain the quality throughout the project delivery in execution. So what are the parameters, what are the QC tools or the checklist what you are going to use, and how you going to do a final acceptance test or user acceptance test. That all you need to plan in the quality plan. There are 7 quality tool, quality check tool, what we call. That is not the particular agenda for today's session, but these are the basic framework of the quality management. Now let's further understand the thing. How should you start the quality things? So as you see over here, that it's from beginning to the end. You can start with following some standards. So ISO 9000 is a quality standard, so you can take that external standards of the framework, or you can use your own organization standards. Some food and other industries following FDA norms and other things. So that what are the quality standards in your industry, in your project that you have to comply with or you can follow with. You can use the training cycle plan, do, check, act, and is required constantly improvement. So quality control where you can verify the things and correct, and the quality assurance it's more related to the process driven where you are following the processes established and you can constantly improve. With the quality control, you just need to check the checklist and the deliverables conformity or not, and then you can redefine or improve the thing. Let me further explain how you can with an example. Like one factor is that a very well said that garbage in is garbage out. So that is equally important in your data analysis and artificial intelligence, that if your quality of data is compromised, then the end result would not be up to the mark. So you make sure that the data quality. So it's a vice versa. Means if your input, let's say you are manufacturing a fruit juice, in a fruit juice manufacturing, if you take the raw material with bad, good quality of fruits you cook, and then you can process them and preparing a fruit juice, then there might be chances that you can mash up the processes, you do all processes in a wrong way, and after the end you can come up with the fruit juice which is not up to the good quality. That is possible though your raw material is good, but vice versa, if you took a very damaged or kind of raw material or fruits which is not up to the mark or a good quality, and then you do all the good processes to process and come up with the fruit juice, that end result might not be a good drink until you use some chemicals to make that things, but in a natural process it's not possible. So here I just wanted to draw your kind attention that in the quality we should make sure that if you wanted to produce a good end result, then you should consider that our input should also be having that good quality, and for that you have to do some filters or check at the inputs. Let's further discuss on the different dimension of the quality. So there are some keywords or the terminology introduced in the PMBOK version 7 that you have to be aware to deal with the quality. First, performance. Does the deliverables function as intended? It is fit for purpose. Related to the conformity, is the deliverables is fit for use? Then reliability. Does the deliverables produce the consistent each time? Means it's not possible that one time you give a good result and second time it's not. It's a reliability. You constantly give the good result and realize that does the deliverables able to cope up with the foreseen failure and how fast you can recover from that incident. So as you know that we are living in a VUCA world, we don't know, there are many uncertainty. But if something happens, then how fast you can bounce back, that is about the resilience of the thing. The satisfaction that your end client or customer are satisfied with your product or end result, that is related to that. Uniformity, does the deliverables show the parity of other deliverables? So it is related to one product is come up with size and shape and the other product is come up with a different size and shape. It's not related to the uniformity. You should every time produce with the consistency the same product with the same quality, so that related to the uniform. Efficiency, does the different product and life with the it's kind of with the least efforts you can create a great output. So with the minimum input, how maximum you can get an output, that is related to the efficiency of the project. In a PMBOK, if you go with the benefits of using the quality principles, these are the benefits. So your project delivers that fit for purpose, the project that delivers that meets the stakeholders' expectations, so there is no communication gap, and the project delivers with the minimum or no defect. Here the focus that we can build in quality, so there is no kind of back and forth, so we don't need to wait till the products comes to the market and the customers come with the complaint, so we can improve that or detect and minimal errors. Then timely and expedite delivery, that is also related to the quality, and reduce the rework or the scrap, that is the output or advantage of coming up with the good quality product. And continuous improvement, that is the benefit of using this quality principle. Complexity. And complexity, how it's impact the project, what are the factors that contributing to the complexity and how we can navigate that complexity. So this particular slide of the complexity we took from the PMBOK version 7, and that says that we have to navigate the complexity. So how we can navigate the complexity? What are the challenges which need to overcome, and is there any way by which we can compromise on the complexity? Let's discuss that. So first, try to understand what is the project complexity. So as you see over here, there are many factors that contributing to the complexity, like uncertainty, volatility, unknown, uniqueness of the project, and there are limiting constraints that all contribute, and many more. There are a few indicated over here. So complexity is the characteristics of a project or its environment that is difficult to manage due to human behavior, system behavior, and the ambiguity. The nature of the complexity cannot be controlled, so that you need to understand, because that is a limitation. You cannot control everything, right? So though project team can modify their actions or activities to address the impact that occurs as a result of the complexity. So we have a limited controls. We cannot control the things which is like external and internal, but somehow we can try to address that by changing and introducing an activities that might impact the complexity. So let's try to understand that what are the common source of the complexity that can contribute to the complexity. So first would be the human behavior, second would be the system behavior, third would be your uncertainty or ambiguity, and the fourth would be the technological innovation. So this is not just a limited one, there are many. This is just an indicative list what we had mentioned over here, but what are the things that we are going to discuss one by one. So human behavior, what do you mean by the human behavior? It is interplay of the conduct, attitude and experience of the people that contribute for the project. So by introducing elements of subjectivity such as personal agenda, sometimes might be conflict with the project and the organization goal. So that is something which are tricky things. Some people's characters are not aligned with the project's goals and vision. Stakeholders located in the remote location may have different time zones. They may speak different language altogether and they have different cultures known. They may increase the complexity of your project, so that you need to understand what are that and how you're going to manage that, human factors involved in that. Second would be your system behavior. It is because it's all are interconnected, that it is result of dynamic interdependency with among the project elements. So there is critical path which needs to be complied. So for example, the integration of different technology systems that cause threat or impact on the project goal, so that you need to understand that is a system behavior that is different from the human behavior. Even I can say that human behavior is more complex than the system behavior, because in a system behavior you can able to predict the things, you can able to diagnose the things, but human behavior is completely unpredictable, that differ from person to person, and that is having many factors contributing to that. Now try to understand what you mean by the uncertainty. So uncertainty arises due to the lack of understanding and awareness of issues or known. For the what would be the following solution or the issues which we are trying to deal with. Uncertainty includes unknown, known unknown, and black swan theory that we are going to discuss in couple of minutes, which are emerging factors that are completely outside an existing knowledge of the experience. Let me give you an example to understand the black swan theory. So here, as I say that there are known things and unknown things. So known thing, if I wanted to give an example, it says that not wearing a seat belt can cause an accident, right? So that is the fact that you know, that is known to you. What is unknown? Known unknown, the Venn diagram, that is intersection point, that says that some drunk and drive can hit my car. So if you drunk and drive, so you can hit the car, but when you can hit that you don't know, but there is a high probability. So that is known unknown, and there is unknown, that is a black swan event, that is beyond your knowledge domain. So you cannot even predict that things might happen, like the COVID impact. So in 2000 or 2004-5, we don't know that in 2019 that this COVID may impact. So that is unknown things. That is, I will give you an example by this universe. Like in this universe, we are a very teeny dot. So there are so many things which is beyond our imagination, which we don't even know. So that's the unknown factors. That is a black swan event that may occur. So how you can deal with that we discuss in upcoming slides, but try to understand the ambiguity first. So ambiguity is the state of being unclear, of not knowing what to expect or how to comprehend a situation. Ambiguity can arise from having many options or a lack of clarity on the optional choices we have. We are living in 21st century where we have many options available that might increase our complexity, because we get confused at what to do and what to choose and what not to choose. Unclear and misleading event, emerging issue and subject to situation can also lead to an ambiguity. Now I will simplify that. Like some are call a cab, and she respond like, okay, you are a cab. So it's a joke, but it is kind of misinterpretation, because peoples are not used to their behavior and cultural barrier that goes. So there are the maybe things, means there are many directions, but you don't know which direction to go. That is related to the ambiguity. So if I wanted to explain this by a diagram, this is a time, the x-axis is a time and the y-axis is the degree of uncertainty or ambiguity. So if you check the dotted red line, that indicate the uncertainty. So in your project once the times comes. So from initiation to closing, you get more the clarity. So your uncertainty is reduced when your project move from initiation to closing, because things are get clear and you get more certain things, right? So that is the uncertainty. But the green axis, it's showing your ambiguity. So that is completely different. There is no correlation that your ambiguity might be at the high at the beginning and low at the end. It may be fluctuate like this. It's too volatile. So this is how the ambiguity and the uncertainty behave in the project environment, and how you can reduce that. That we will discuss, but try to understand the one more source of the complexity, that is technological innovation that is constantly changing world. The 5G spectrum, we are moving from industrial revolution 1 to industrial revolution 4, the IoT things and all things, blockchains and all these new technologies along with their technology contribute to the complexity, because you need to understand what are the replications. The privacy is the paramount in the shared data kind of environment. So all that can contribute to the complexity. Now, as if I wanted to summarize the complexity principle, that is the one key slide that we call VUCA world. We all live in a VUCA world, that is volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. So volatility indicate here that is something which is constantly fluctuating with you don't have the control, like stock market, the oil price, the dollar and all that are constantly fluctuation that is indicating volatility. How to respond to volatility? By having a vision that give you a direction, that in which direction you wanted to give your effort. The second thing is uncertainty, that in a very limited time you don't know what would going to be happen next, like when the COVID impacted, when we are finding vaccination and what would be the next thing, lockdown and other things. So that is uncertainty. So how you can respond to uncertainty? By understanding the problem, that how you're going to respond. The third is the complexity, that you are having a misinterpretation of the things and the things are so interconnected with each other, and that creating more complex environment. You can solve that by clarity, focus and trying to having a flexible culture to respond to the complexity. And finally, the ambiguity, because we are living in a VUCA world which having that ambiguity, where we have a different culture and we are working with that. So how you can respond that? By using an agility, that decisions making with innovation. We have a wide spectrum of the people, team working on that goals. So that is how we can respond to the ambiguity. So this is how we can navigate the complexity in the VUCA world. So this is a good example. Now, PMBOK 7 summarized the navigate complexity by knowledge of the system thinking, that the principle that we need to understand. We are having a systems of the systems. We are a part of the bigger machine, so that the system thinking knowledge you need to develop. Experience of the past projects and the wisdom, if you can bring to the table, that also bring help you to navigate the complexity. And constant learning, because we are in a VUCA world that is required that you should constantly learn the things. Being vigilant and indication of the complexity, that what are the things changing in your surroundings. You should be vigilant and be ready on your toes. And finally, allow the project team to adapt their approaches and the plans based on the situation what they are facing. So it's a time for a situational leadership by which we can try to navigate the complex environment. Discussing the 10th principle, that is risk. Now some of you are might confused about the risk, quality. All are a part of your performance domain as well. Then how we can do that same thing in the principle. So there are overlapping things, but the principles are intention that we should have that behavior things that inculcate in the value system or into the behavior of the project team. So what do you mean by the risk? So this particular slide we took from the PMBOK version 7, that indicating that What do you mean by the risk? Risk is related to the uncertainty of the thing. So that is something which is not in your control. That is something which is you don't have that clarity or certainty about that. That is a risk. Now that is, some people get confused. They are considering risk always as a negative thing, but it is not like that. Fundamentally, as per the definition, it says that risk is related to the uncertainty. So uncertainty may be positive or negative. So if it's a positive, what we call it? It's an opportunity. If it's a negative, what we call it? It's a threat. Some of the example as mentioned over here, that if the resources are available earlier, that is a positive thing for your project, though it's uncertainty, but it's a positive, that's why it's called an opportunity. Some of the raw materials are available at cheaper cost because of the current economic dynamics, so that is a positive risk. Some of your tests pass in a first go, that is a positive news for you, that is an opportunity. And vice versa, negative things, some resources are not available, some of them are committed to join on time but they are delaying the joining, that is a risk, that is a negative risk that we call and threat. The expensive raw material prices are shoot up, like the crude oil price because of the Ukraine-Russia war and all that things not in control, negative for your project, that we call threat. Now how we going to understand the impact, or what we call a magnitude of the risk particular? That is a probability into impact, that totality is called a risk magnitude. So suppose consider the probability of the raw material pricing overshoot would be 50% and the impact because of that would be $100 for your project, then probability into impact, that is $50 would be the risk magnitude for that particular risk. So that's how you can try to assess and manage the risk responses for your organization. Now some other definition related to the risk, which is very much essential when you are defining your strategy to deal with risk. These are mentioned over here, like risk management, risk appetite, risk tolerance, and finally risk exposure. Let's discuss one by one. What do you mean by the risk management? The systematic application of principles, approaches, and processes to the task, identifying and assessing the risk, planning and implementing the risk responses, and communicating the risk management activities with the stakeholder. That combine activity, what we call a risk management. Risk appetite is an organization's unique attitude toward the risk taking, that is turn dictate the amount of the risk that is considered acceptable. So now various people have the various risk kind of things, like risk appetite, like our appetite would be differ from person to person. That's the same way the organization risk appetite would be different. Some organization having very high risk appetite, so they can take a high risk. Some organization having a less appetite. So there is a unique things that differ from organization to organization. You have to take an approval from the management. What is your risk appetite to deal with? Then risk tolerance limit, the threshold level or risk exposure that with appropriate approval can be exceeded, but which when exceeded will trigger some form of the responses that we call the risk responses. So that is a risk tolerance level. Beyond that, you cannot go with that risk. You have to take a management approval. So that is a risk tolerance. And finally, risk exposure, that is the extent risk borne by the organization at any given point of the time, that is a risk exposure. Let's understand this definition with some graphical representation over here. So as you see over here in this particular diagram, we have a risk exposure, the positive risk tolerance limit over here, and similarly the negative risk tolerance limit on the both side of the y-axis. The totality up to that particular point, when the organization take that risk, that is a risk threshold, and beyond that risk threshold, it's triggered the risk response strategy for a positive and negative both the risk. There are different risk response strategies that we are going to be discussed in upcoming slide, but this is how it's triggered. So the entire thing that we call the risk appetite, so that much risk an organization can take, that is with some approval of the management, and the risk capacity, that is the exposure of the risk an organization can take beyond that particular threshold limit. So this is the graphical representation how we can represent the risk and other definition. Now, how to implement the risk management? There is an ongoing process throughout the project life cycle. So it's not like that you can do a risk response and risk management at the beginning of the project, but you cannot do. It's throughout the project life cycle you do. It's like identify the risk, then assess the magnitude of the risk, then plan how you're going to implicate that risk, and finally implement that risk response strategy. And the fifth one, the communicate throughout the horizon. So in identify, we can identify what are the contexts and what are the risks, then assess the estimate and evaluate that risk, in which probability and impact grid what we can need to define. That is not part of this particular principle, but these are the holistic view how we are going to deal with the risk. That is a quantitative and qualitative analysis and all not things. It's not covered in this particular principle, but this is how you prepare your mindset to deal with the risk. Then you have to plan and implement, and finally communicate. Communicate is throughout the that risk management cycle. You have to in parallel doing this exercise. Now, what are the risk response strategies? So there are different project management framework like PRINCE2 provided by Axelos. They have this different 5 risk response strategy like avoid, reduce, contingency plan, accept, transfer, and share. And PMP, PMI also come up with the avoid, mitigate, accept, and transfer. The different risk management strategies vary from the different project management framework, that where your tailoring comes into the picture, that what risk response strategy based on your organization requirement you have to derive, where you have to do the tailoring. For your understanding, let's discuss in detail what are the risk response strategy for a negative risk. So first, whenever risk trigger, that is mitigation strategy, in which you are trying to reduce the impact of the risk. So consider the example of a civil project. You are doing a building construction for the organization. So mitigate. So there is a risk of earthquake. So how you can mitigate? You consider that particular risk, that this is the earthquake of seismic zone 6 and in the Richter scale, and accordingly you can design the building. So this is how you can try to mitigate. Second, you have to transfer the risk. So beyond certain things, you took insurance of that. If something goes wrong, then this the liability you are transferring to some other agency, the insurance company. And the second way to deal with this transfer, you have back-to-back contract signed with your subcontractor. So if whatever things are happen, you can transfer that risk to the subcontractor. Then finally, trying to avoid that risk. This is the strategy we can incorporate when there is a life of a person is in danger, like we are dealing with some nuclear things or some experiment with bioweapons and some kind of things where the human life is into the danger. We are scrap the entire project instead of going with that risk. So that is where avoid, when you drop the entire plan. That is a risk response strategy. That is the last stage, but that is something where you can deal with. And finally, you can escalate that risk to the higher authority, because it's not in your control. Then escalate to the higher authority, and finally accept that risk. Like you design and you can implement all that, but beyond that there is some residual risk, like the probability of earthquake happen. So you accept that. You cannot control that. You cannot define the strategy, because there is a cost benefit analysis also play a pivotal role in that. So in way of mitigating that risk, the cost of implementing that strategy is so high. So you cannot try to incorporate that strategy, but simply accept that risk. But you have registered that into the risk register. Similarly, the positive risk response strategy, first you try to enhance. That is a possibility. Suppose there is a clause in your contract, if you complete your project beyond the timeline or before the timeline, then there is an incentive. So what you try to do, you are trying to enhance that particular way by which you can complete the project before the timeline, so you get that incentive. Then finally, share that risk. So suppose you don't have that capability to execute the work order which is given to your organization, but you can share that opportunity with your competitors, so together you can able to achieve that milestone. So that is the sharing the risk response strategy. Then exploit. So you know that this is a gold mine, so you try to exploit this opportunity as much as possible. That is a positive risk response strategy. Finally, escalate. So you know that this is a good opportunity for your organization, but somehow your management or your current capabilities are not permit you to take that particular opportunity. So you can accept that particular risk, or you can do nothing kind of approach in that positive risk response strategy. And finally, escalate to the higher authority, and finally accept that particular risk. So these are the positive and negative risk response strategy. Again, this is vary from organization and project to project. You have to apply your own wisdom. You have to apply the tailoring mindset to choose what is the best strategy to particular risk what you are handling. Now, PMBOK summarize the risk response should be like this. It should be appropriate for significance of the risk. Means you consider the risk based on what is the magnitude, whether you have do proper cost benefit analysis, this particular risk needs to be addressed or not need to be addressed, like that. Cost effective way you have to plan for the risk response or risk handling capability, realistic with the project context. So when you dealing with the risk, you should consider the end objective or output or outcome of your organization projects deliverables. You just not need to carry it out with managing the risk rather than focusing on end result. So you have to be realistic and you designing the risk response and agreed with relevant stakeholders. So whatever the policies or whatever the response strategy you inculcate in your project plan, you should agree and give consent of all relevant stakeholders into that. And finally, on the responsible person, ownership of the responsible person, risk actioning, that if risk occur, then who is the responsible? Like CRO, chief risk officers in some organization. In the project also, there are some person who is on that particular risk, who is monitored the risk register, and if risk trigger, then there is action who try to implement the risk response strategy accordingly. That is adaptability and resilience. So what do you mean by the adaptability and what do you mean by the resilience? How it's impact your project? So this is a management jargon that after COVID pandemic you frequently heard those things, that we need an adaptable and resilience organization who can adapt all those changes, what is happening in the ecosystem. So adaptability and resilience. So this particular slide we took from the PMBOK version 7 that says that adaptability is your ability to change from the economics or change from the changing environment. How best you can adopt those changes, that refer to the adaptability. And resilience means how there are two traits, like how you can absorb the impact of that particular change and how fast you can bounce back from that shock. And throughout this process, our focus should not be on output. Our focus should to achieve the outcomes. So that is a higher value rather than achieving that particular deliverables. So let's discuss and understand on this adaptability and resilience. So what is the adaptability and what is the resilience? A literal meaning. So adaptability refers to the ability to respond to the changing condition, and resilience has two complementary to it. First, that how you can absorb the impact, the ability to absorb the impact and the ability to recover from that setback or failures to achieve the old status quo. So that is about the resilience. Let's discuss with an example. So as you see over here, there is an x-axis that indicate your timeline, where there is a y-axis that indicate your performance. So now suppose there is an old status quo, as you see over here, in that you are doing your regular things. There is some foreign element impacted. So that foreign element may be anything like COVID pandemic, how it's impacted, and your performance get deteriorated from your regular or optimum one. And this performance deterioration is still the point where you get some idea to transform, like the work from home solution or hybrid solution, so that until you can adopt such ideas to recover from that setback and you inculcate those ideas in terms of the best practices or integration to achieve the new status quo, that as you see over here, that you can achieve better than the previous one. So that is how you can achieve that new status quo or a new state or a future state. And this entire journey, that depends how best you can absorb that impact, learn from failures, adapt from that changing environment, and bounce back to achieve the bigger version. So this is adaptability and resilience. So this is, we had seen in a nature, like analogy to adaptability resilience, like chameleon is a good example of the adaptability. The snake is a good example of the flexibility, and the elephant is a good example of resilience. So this is from my personal observation of the nature, but these are the animals that shows this characteristic in a good condition. Now let's understand the toolkit to adaptability and resilience. So to make your organization adaptable and resilient, what is required? That you have a clear strategy and approach. What can go wrong? That predictions you should do with all assumption, and built-in strength and options you have to available with, and plan for outcomes rather than output. So this is the toolkit that helps you to achieve those characteristics. Now Pauling has given this renewal cycle, that first phase, that is the growth phase. So this is just to understand the concept that every organization go in a periodic, like in a growth stage, your organization is growing from 1 CR business to 100 CR business. In terms of the employees, there is 1 employee and it would be a large conglomerate. So once you achieve that growth, your flexibility is reducing, because day by day you become very rigid structure processes, and that is many times the reason for a downfall, because you are not adaptable, because the size is increasing and the processes are become so rigidly. So that is one of the reason for a downfall, and that's where your organization start causing, like this example, a tree who is stood firmly in storms and who is not able to adjust, that are just collapse in the thunders and condition. So now the second phase started, where you come up with the new ideas and you can grow and grow. If you are not able to adjust, either you perish or you can come up with a new transformative organization or reorganization. I can make you understand the same flow with one more slide. Let's simplify here. There are 2 loops. One is a forward loop and the second is a backward loop. So as you check over here, the forward loop, that is a very persistent and slow. Here the law of diminishing return says that once you achieve the highest level of efficiency, then whatever the inputs you are putting, you are not getting that optimal output for that. So as you check over here, therefore front loop, that says that it is very slow incremental phase of growth, where it is predictable and high degree of certainty. But the back loop, that is a very rapid, because it's a reorganization, and very uncertain, because you don't know if you are not able to adjust with that system or ecosystem, you are just perish. So many organizations or startup companies not able to adjust with the dynamics of the environment, and they are simply get perish. So this is a good example to understand the adaptability and resilience cycle. What PMBOK summarize the adaptability resilience, that to have this trait, you have to be a constantly learning and improving organization. You have a diverse project team, come from a different project background, so you have a wide spectrum to understand the ecosystem. New ways of thinking and working. You should not rigid with your standards things of doing, but you should start exploring the things, what are the new ways, and you are open organization for the conversation, what are the new ways, and open-ended design that helps to balance and speedy growth. The 12th principle, that is change. Now this 12 principles is not in a chronological order. There is no kind of ranking. It's a kind of, you can use parallelly, or it's not in a sequential order. Let's discuss the change management, how the change is impacting the project, what are the ways by which the change can be helpful. And it's not just your project change, but the mindset of the people is also equally important. So let's understand the change principle. So as you're aware that change is something which is constantly happening in the project environment. If it's not changing, that we are not call it a project, right? So it's temporary endeavor project. That's why we call it temporary, because it's finally changed from one stage to another stage. But let's understand the simplified example of the change. So what is the change? So in the project management or a change management, there are two different domains in which a little bit skill set are vary. Let's understand, like in your actual state, or what we call a status quo, there is some transition happen, what we call a transition phase, and you can achieve the stagnant state, or what we call a future state. So from current state to the future state, it's a journey through the transition phase. That is the change happening, right? Now in a project environment, it is very technical that how you're going to achieve the desired output. We are following on that. But the change management, it's something bigger thing on kind of overlapping the project management, where the organization transformation, the change of the mindset, or the entire transformation of the organizations happen. Let's understand in detail about the change in the project management, how it's correlated. So as you see over here, there is a project management where there is a 5 different states like initiation, planning, monitoring, control, execution, and close. But in a project, the counterpart, that is the change management, where you have to prepare for the change, manage the change, how you're going to manage that, the planning, then manage the change, the execution, and finally closing the change, or what we call sustain the plan. Or throughout this, there is a reinforcing the change. So there is integrations for successful delivery. So every human being are very much sometimes they want to live in a comfort zone. They don't want it to adopt the changes, because there is uncertainty to them are always there inside their mind. So they are restrain the change. So how you can give them a kind of assurance to accommodate, how they become a change catalyst. For that, there is a different models are there, how you're going to do that kind of change management, that what we are going to discuss in this model. So there are 3 phases of the change management. Different methodologies are there. The first phase of the change management is how you are going to approach them for the change, in which you define the change, then you prepare plan for that change. The second phase of the change management, what we call managing the change, where executions are take place, where you can define in detail out and assign the responsibility, communicate properly to each and everyone involved. So that is managing the change. And the third stage, what we called sustain the change. So change should not be kind of backfire to the organization. So that is how you can sustain that particular change. And that is a model where you have to develop the awareness, desire for the change, then knowledge, ability, and finally reinforce. So this is the particular concept where we are going to develop the change management. So ADKR is a model where A stands for awareness, where you have to aware of the change. Then your D stands for how you can make everyone on board to achieve that particular change that is a desire, and finally the knowledge that what are the things required for the change, the best practices, tools and techniques and all that. So this particular three component that are enablement zone when you prepare your organization for the transformation, and the second tool that is your ability when you develop that ability for the change, and finally reinforce that change where you have to communicate frequently with the relevant stakeholder to give them assurance that change is good for them. So that is an engagement zone. So that is an enablement zone and the engagement zone for achieving that change. So let's simplify this. A stands for your awareness for the need for the change. You have to understand your organization that why it's required for the change, what are the need for the change, a gap analysis. There are many trigger points that force you, compel you for the change, but you have to develop that kind of awareness in your organization, and then you have to convince for desire to support for the change the team that what's there into them for the change, means why they are changing, what's they are getting if they means adopt that change. So that mindset that you have to convey in clearly to each and everyone. And finally, knowledge of the how to change. You have to develop some tools and techniques and help them with the support structure for they can go into the change. And finally, you have to develop the ability for the determined skill set and behavior skill set so that they can do this particular change. And finally, reinforce the change. It's your communication strategy and how you can make this thing snail so strongly inside each and every one involved, how the stakeholders are reinforced with to make the change happen. So this is the ADKR model that enable the change. So ADKR model, there are different project management methodology, as we had discussed in the tailoring principles, that you not need to blindly follow each and every processes, but like if you are following the waterfall approach where the sequential things are there, where you do the things in a sequential, where how ADKR model can apply on that parameter. So you can prepare in a planning stage only the awareness, then desire for change, the knowledge, and in execution you implement the ability, and finally release and reinforce. So like in Agile model, there are different sprint. So at every sprint, you have to involve the enablement zone, that is your ability, and reinforce. And during the planning of that particular sprint, you have that ADR, that is awareness, desire, and knowledge session. So likewise, you can implement the iterative project lifecycle with the change. And finally, PDCA, that is dimming cycle of plan, do, act, check and act. So in a planning stage, you have that awareness of the ADKR model. Then in a do, you have the remaining three, that is desire and knowledge and ability to develop. And then in a check, there is a reinforcing. And again, the act, you have to involve with all these three ADR, that is awareness, desire, and knowledge, ADK cycle. So this is how you can implement this based on the different project life cycle you adopting. And finally, ADKR model is project people change at different pace, right? So it's not necessary that people A, for the person A, how the pace in which he might get that particular level of change in after Q5. But if you check the growth of the person B, he get that state of ADQR in a different time zone. The person C start late, then person D it start after the Q3, and the person E is get this change mode in very early stage of his career or in the project duration. So this pace of the change in a different person to person is very, as I told you, that life cycle is also vary the change model. So this all related how you're going to implement this particular change, and that related to the change management principles that specifically for the organization concern. PMBOK 7 summarize the change is it should go with the structured approach. You should not go in a haphazard manner. You should plan well before. Then change can originate from external or internal sources. So that are many trigger points that enable that particular change. And enabling changes, sometimes you should not try to control or restrain from the change, because it anyways going to be happen. So instead of try to restrain the change, one should try to incorporate the change in a way, kind of environment where there is people support for that particular change. And finally, attempting too much change in the small time zone may leads to a change resistance. So you should not adopt a big bang approach in which we are trying to adopt all changes in a one go. We should go with incremental approach or ad hoc approach. Incremental is the best, where you can small and little steps you are taking for correction and change in a proper time duration. And final, stakeholders engagement in the motivation approach help in change adoption. So you should have a team who is supporting you for adopting the change. Hi professional. Yesterday I got a call from one of my colleagues, and he raised a concern that he understands all these 12 principles of the project management, but somehow he is not able to remember all these 12 principles. So I think some of you also have the same concern or same the challenge. So in this video, I wanted to give you a technique by which you can easily recall all these 12 principles. And if you stay tuned to the last moment, I will assure you that it is very easy. So are you ready to learn and understand the technique by which you can recall these 12 principles? Let's begin. So these are the 12 principles, as you see over here, that stewardship, value, tailoring, risk, team, system, thinking, quality, adaptability and resilience, stakeholder, leadership, competencies, and change. Sounds odd, means though you understand, but it's difficult to remember. So what is the technique? Let me give you the technique first. So I will going to tell you one story that help you to recall or remember this principle. So story is very simple. It's the story of Mr. Q, who wants to travel from Sydney to Chennai. So this is the formula that reflected over here. Q travel, that's 3 cross SC. So this is acronym of the all 12 principles. Now I will tell you the story, and simultaneously I will make you explain all these 12 principles. Now in our upcoming session, we are going to discuss each and every principles in detail. So if you wanted to understand, you will get that one by one all the videos. But this particular session, I just wanted to focus to how to recall or remember all these 12 principles. So let's begin. So first, let's consider the case of Mr. Q. That is the quality. So quality is regarding about what is the expectation or the requirement fit for purpose to the customer. So that is the quality. Now Mr. Q wants to travel from Sydney to Chennai to sign some agreement or to have a deal. So that is, he has to travel 3 times from Sydney to Chennai. So that is how you can recall this. Now second stand for T, that is tailor. Now he has tailor is the principle which is related to the organization context in which you wanted to tailor the processes and other things. So now based on the requirement, he has 2 options available. He took a flight, and second he took a ship to reach from his source to the destination. Now first would be the tailoring based on the ships or based on travel. Now he choose to travel through air, and that is the risk, because to traveling through the air there is a risk of many, means there are a risk of flight might get delayed because of these things. Flight, there is earlier incidents of collapsing and other things. So he has took that risk. And how he evaluate all these 2 options, like if he go through the air cargo flight, then cost would be high but time would be less. But if we go through the ship, then in that case time would be high. So that is adaptability. Adaptability is concerned with the 2 things. Adaptability means the impact, how you absorb those impact, and resilience, how you bounce back and achieve from that failure and you call back. So this is regarding the adaptability. So based on traveling from Sydney to Chennai, he take that risk and he take that adaptability and the value, the cost benefit analysis he do and how he get that deal signed, that is most important. So that is associated with the value and the leadership. The flight is commanded by the pilot, so he took a leadership role. Now there is no need to get confused with the authority and the leadership. Leadership is sometimes the situational leadership or servant leadership. We will discuss in detail in the upcoming session when we are discussing the principles. But here you need to remember by that the traveling or the flight taken by the pilot, he play a leadership role over here. Now next, the 3S and the 3C, that first stand for the steward. So steward is something related to the extra care and the cautious, like the air hostess in the flight, he played the steward role. So without the air hostess also you can travel from one source to the destination, but the air hostess give you the comforts that he will assure you that care and other things to be taken care. So that is the steward. As a project manager, you also needs to be make sure that all the members in your team should have that relief and the comforts in your presence. So that is the steward. The stakeholder. So in this journey from Sydney to Chennai, there are many stakeholders involved. Passengers, different airlines, air traffic controllers, different government regulations, many things. So you have to take care of all this. The picture is showing the air traffic controller and different airlines is indicated. There is a system. So system thinking, you need to think from a different internal, external. There is a combination with different flights available. There is a humans. So all these are the interrelated system of the system, that how you book with which airlines, which time zone, which is the pilot. So all these have system of systems, so that thinking is required. The complexity. So with the system of the system things, there is a high complexity. Now complexity is not necessarily the related to human behavior, because human behavior is itself a complex, but apart from that there is so many things like air traffic controller, there is the systems, there is so many technical signals. So all this create a complexity, and how all this you can overcome by collaborating. So collaborative is a principle where the different cross-functional teams work together to achieve the project goals. So here the air traffic controller, the pilot, the air hostess and other stakeholders work in a collaboration to reach to the destination. So that is the collaboration. And finally the change. Mr. Q reached from the Sydney to his destination Chennai. He has signed that deal. That is a change he wanted to achieve. So that change is a principle related to what the organization benefits he wanted to achieve. So after the project is handover, there is a profit what we are tracking, the benefit tracking, the operation things. So here it's indicating of the change mindset and the change what you want to achieve. We're going to be discuss all this in detail one by one, but this is the technique by which you can remember all these 12 principles. So I just wanted to recap again. Try to remember this sentence. Mr. Q traveled 3 times from Sydney to Chennai. And this is the way you can remember these 12 principles. Just remember one sentence. I repeat once again for you. Mr. Q traveled 3 times from Sydney to Chennai. And you can remember all these 12 principles. So the latest PMBOK 7 version has divided in 2 parts. Part 1, that is standard for project management, and part 2, that is a guide of PMBOK 7. That in part 1 we had already covered introductions, the system for value delivery and all that things. In a part 2 we are going to discuss this specifically, as you see over here, the project performance domain, tailoring model and methods, and many more things. So let's discuss one by one. Part 2. So first chapter, that is introduction, that briefly describe about what are the structure of the PMBOK 7, what are the relationship of your part 1 and part 2 basically, and the chapter 3, that is the change in the PMBOK 7, and the chapter 4, that is your relationship to the PMI standard plus. Now let's discuss the structure first. The structure of this particular chapter, that having very overview of your project performance domain. Then section 2, that is your tailoring, and section 4, that is model, methods and artifacts. Now let's dive into the detail and discuss one by one. So first, project performance domain. So in the PMBOK 7, it introduced a groundbreaking shift from knowledge area to the project performance domain. And these domains align with the skills of the project managers need to excel in their roles. We have got 8 project performance domain that is highlighted over here, like team development approach, life cycle, planning, project delivery, and as you see over here, the uncertainty would be the last. So all these 8 project performance domain, we will discuss all this in detail in upcoming session. Today, I just want you to give a very highlight and bird eye view of what are we going to cover. Now the tailoring. So what do you mean by the tailoring? So do you have any idea or any guess? Yes, you guessed it right. It is the same way the tailor cut and fit based on the shape of the client and the size of the client. We apply the tailoring in the same way. The principle remains same or a constant, but we will tailor-made our process based on the requirement. So PMBOK 7 introduced tailoring in deliberated adaptation of the project approaches, the governance and the process to make them more suitable to given environment and work. In upcoming session, we will discuss in detail about what to tailor, how to tailor, tailoring process and diagnostic and the summary. Now let's go to the next slide, that is model, methods and artifacts. So what do you mean by the model? Let's discuss step by step. So model is a description of thinking strategy to explain a process or a framework or a phenomena. A model helps to explain how something works in a real world. In upcoming session, we will discuss in detail about different models. What are the different models we are going to discuss, like situationship model, communication model, motivational model, change model, complexity model, project team development model, and others models like siphon framework, Tuckman ladder, theory of needs, and many more. Let's see that. And methods, what do you mean by the method? A very simple understanding. Method is for achieving an outcome result of the project. So in upcoming session, we will discuss in detail about what are the data gathering, analysis method, estimating method, meeting and events, and other model and methods that focus on how you deliver the project, like probability and impact matrix, lessons learned, workshop, project closeout, story point estimation, net promoter score, wide band Delphi techniques, and many more. There are n numbers of methods that we are going to discuss or get an idea about. And artifacts, what do you mean by the artifacts? Artifacts is a template, document, output, or a project deliverable. In upcoming session, we will discuss and detail it out a different type of artifact, like strategy artifacts, then your logs and register, then plans, risk register, stakeholder engagement, story point, value maps, and many more. That is a number of artifacts that we are producing that we are going to discuss. The next thing, that is the relationship between part 1 and part 2, that how, as you see over here, that as you work in the project performance domain is guided by your principle of the project performance management. What is a principle? Principle is a norms, a truth, or a value. The principle is sit above the project performance domain and providing guidance to activities in each domain. Like if you check over here, PMBOK version 1 to 7, there is a transitional and significant change we are getting in the PMBOK 7. That is a change, like focus on delivery or outcomes regardless the approaches, shift from the process based standard to principle based one that we are going to discuss, introduction of the 8 project performance domain, and the very important signification on the tailoring in achieving the project success. So this is all about what we are going to discuss, and the main component what I like personally most about, that is relationship to the PMI Standard Plus. What do you mean by the PMI Standard Plus? That is a platform to offering up-to-date practice aligned with PMI standards, all vetted by your subject matter expert. That way you get a current and emerging practices, PMI's library of standards and the projects, and many more things. It offers a dynamic body of knowledge with real-time access, and it's in-depth information that is aligned with your PMI standards. So for your knowledge, I just wanted to log into my screen, the PMI standard. It's look like this, and you can check what are the approaches, industry, and the format based on the industry. You can take that. So in the conclusion, we had covered in today's session the structure of the PMBOK 7, the relationship between part 1 and part 2, change to the project management body of knowledge, and relationship to the PMI standard. Deciphering the project performance domain. At its core, a project performance domain is a collection of interconnected activities that form the bedrock of effective project delivery. These domains are like gear in a well-oiled machinery, working in harmony to turn a project vision into the reality. Here we dive into 8 such project performance domains. These are the unique focus of all these project performance domains. These are, as you see over here, stakeholder, team, development approach and life cycle, planning, project work, delivery, measurement, uncertainty, and these are the 8 project performance domains we are going to discuss one by one. Let's start with the power of stakeholder performance domain. Let's kick things off with stakeholder performance domain. Here we are all about the stakeholders. Effective engagement with them is make or break factor in your project success. We will explore the strategies to foster their involvement in decision making and implementation. For more details, you can check the image over here, but we just take an overview for now. We will move to the next, that is unleashing the team performance domain. Moving on the team performance domain, where we focus on the beating heart of your project, that is the team. We will discuss now how to create an environment that nurture high performance team, encourage the leadership from all members, and share ownership of the outcome. We will discuss this again in detail in the upcoming session. Let's move to the next session, that is your crafting a development approach life cycle. Now let's dwell into the development approach life cycle performance domain. As you see over here, we will uncover the art of choosing the right development approach, cadence, and project life cycle phases. The choice here can significantly impact your project success. So it's worth your attention that what kind of project management approach and life cycle you are choosing, hybrid, agile, iterative, or whatnot, that we will discuss in detail in the next. But for now, let's move to the next, that is mastering the planning performance domain. The planning performance domain is our next stop, where meticulously organization, elaboration, and coordination are the stars for the show. Planning isn't one and done task. It's evolve as your project progress, adapting to the changing circumstances. More details you can check the image over here. But for next thing, we are going to discuss the thriving the project work performance domain. The project work performance domain is where we will roll up our sleeves to establish the project processes, manage resources, and foster the culture of continuous learning. These are the gears that keep your project orientation and operation running like a clockwork. We will discuss this domain in detail in the next sessions. For now, we will move to the next, that is achieving excellence and delivery performance domain. Our 7th domain is the delivery performance domain, where we ensure your project delivers on its promises. We're talking about meeting the scope, quality expectation, ultimately adding your business value or value to the business, that we will discuss in detail. Let's move to the 8th performance domain, navigate the measurement performance domain. Let's set sail for the measurement performance domain, where we assess the project performance and take action to maintain excellence. Timely and accurate information about performance, guiding us in making an informed decision. That is most important one that we'll discuss. Let's move to the next, that is conquering the uncertainty in the uncertain performance domain. This is the last but certainly not least. The uncertainty performance domain take us into the realm of risk and unpredictability. We'll explore the nuance of uncertainty from the risks to ambiguity and complexity. For more details, you can check the image over here. Regarding uncertainty, we will have a detailed video in the next session. But for now, so to conclude, the 8 project performance domain that compasses the effective project outcome, understanding and mastering this domain can be your ticket to project success. So that is just an overview that what we had in today's session. In the upcoming session, we will discuss each and every performance domain in detail. So that's wrap up for today's video. If you found the information enlightening, don't hesitate to like, subscribe and share for more insightful content on the project management and related topics. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you in the next video. Thank you.